Hi guys, welcome along to the A-Level Edexcel Paper 3 live stream. Thank you for those of you that have joined. There are three things that I want to just talk about quickly before we get started. So hopefully you guys are ready. Hopefully those of you that have been here before, could you please make sure that you've got pen, paper, potentially a calculator, probably less needed for a calculator today in comparison to other Q&As. A couple of things. One, thank you very much for those of you that have been messaging in regards to like after paper two, and a lot of you have been like, oh my God, you predicted the paper. Just to clarify a few things. One is I have never at any point said that I am predicting papers. Anyone that is doing that, please like take that with a pinch of kind of caution. You should be prepared for everything. And actually this paper, you're probably more prepared for this paper than any of the exams that you've set up to now, because it builds on the content that you've already revised for. So today, a lot of it will be focusing on exam technique and making sure that you really nail the 25 marker. So that's the first. I haven't been predicted, but I'm glad that some of the things that we went through came up, and hopefully some of the things we go through today do come up as well, but I have no idea. Number two, as part of the comments on the YouTube videos and Instagrams and whatnot, thank you very much for the very nice comments. The comparisons between myself and Econ Plus Style, just to clarify, I have enormous respect for him. I think he's amazing. And I think that you guys are very lucky that you have the opportunity to utilize my resources, but also his resources. And so honestly, like it isn't about competing with one another. He's amazing. I'm a massive fan. That brings me very nicely to number three. So I think you guys think I don't read your comments on YouTube. I purposely kind of ignore to some extent because there's all sorts of silliness going on in the chat. If you want to utilize your time and use your time to basically argue with one another and have fights on the chat on YouTube, listen, it's up to you guys. Honestly, it's up to you. If you want to waste your time doing that, you can do that. Last time, obviously, there was a bit of commotion without naming names. If you see me on another YouTubers or Instagram or any rival companies' platform promoting my stuff or trying to basically undermine them, know that I must be so rattled and that I must be going through some next level midlife crisis. On that note, let's rock and let's roll. Let's go. Today, I want to make sure that you guys understand that whilst half of your exam is the 25 marker, the other part of it, which you genuinely tend to neglect, is the 12 marker, the 8 marker, and the 5 marker. Now, quite a few of you guys have mentioned that you want me to put out like a layout of timings and everything. That will come out tomorrow or the day after. You'll get literally on Instagram, on TikTok. We'll have the timings for this paper and what you need to do. Yeah? Right. So first things first, I want to take you guys through what I regard as a very, very difficult question. So let's jump straight into the deep end. Yeah? The question I think that is one of the most challenging ones they've set so far is June 2019, paper 3. Now, I may have done this in paper 1. I can't actually remember if I did or didn't. But even if I have, let's just go over it because I think this is a challenging question. So let me share my screen. And let's look at the paper together. Okay, right. So June 2019, paper 3, here we go, has a really awkward 12 marker. And I want to go through what that is. Right. 12 marker says the following. It says, in extract A, lines 15 to 16, it was suggested that some firms may respond to the advertising ban by cutting prices of their products. Using game theory and the information provided in figure 1 and extract A, discuss the effects on firms of cutting prices in an oligopolistic market. Right, this is awkward as anything. And the reason why this is awkward is because it requires you to do several things. One is you need to reference figure 1 and extract A. They often do that, by the way, as a way of almost tricking you guys. So make sure that if it says use the figure, to use the figure, you often forget. Number 2 is that it requires you to use game theory. Now, game theory is not a problem if they were colluding. If we could show evidence that there's a cartel, but then we're raising their prices, then I could easily evaluate that with, oh, prisoner's dilemma. It's going to break down. Yeah. The problem with this is the fact that actually they're reducing their prices. So let's dissect this question together and work out how to write a really effective answer here. By the way, be very careful in terms of exam technique because of the fact that you can get all 8 analysis marks unless it explicitly says do 2 factors. For a 12 marker, you can get all 8 analysis marks with 1 detailed analysis, like a really detailed analysis will suffice to get you the 8 marks. So first things first, I know some of you may not have read the data. To give you some context, what they've done is they've placed an advertising ban for the likes of Walkers and other crisp manufacturers. Now, the first thing I wanted to work out is to go in the question, okay, what is the effect of an advertising ban? In what context can I talk about advertising? Well, one is it could potentially decrease demand, possibly, but let's go slightly more sophisticated than that. If there's an advertising ban, what happens to the market? Do you guys agree that an advertising ban makes the market more contestable? Right, that is now wow level. Can we just talk about what that means? A contestable market is a market in which there are low barriers to entry and exit and low sunk costs. Well, advertising is a sunk cost, true? So if now these big firms don't have the advantage of being able to advertise, that represents an opportunity for new firms to enter the market. The barriers to entry into the market have gone down because I no longer need to compete with these big companies on an advertising like budget. Right. Let's think about what happens if the market becomes contestable. If a market becomes more contestable, the whole point of contestability is to argue that the behavior of the firms already in the market, the incumbent firms, is likely to change. How is it going to change? If you're Walkers and I now tell you, listen, there's a real genuine chance that a new firm might enter the market, what are you going to do to your prices? Would you guys agree that realistically you're going to start cutting your prices? You're going to basically go, okay, let's reduce prices because I want to ensure I don't lose market share. But number two is, am I going to treat my customers well or badly? Do you guys agree that I'm going to be amazing to my customers? I'm going to be, oh, I love you guys. Please don't leave me. You're the best, right? That therefore helps explain why these firms are cutting their prices in response to the advertising ban. Fair? So let's deal with the effect of that. What are they therefore doing? So if I'm Walkers, what might I do in response to the advertising ban? Well, I probably, because the market's more contestable, I'm probably going to adopt limit pricing. Let me explain limit pricing to you guys. Let me share my screen. So let's go through it on the board. Right, so this is what limit pricing is. So imagine the following. Imagine I am Walkers, right? I could, if I wanted to, maximize my profit. I could charge a price for my crisps that maximizes my profits, yeah? But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to instead set my price below the average cost of potential entrants to the market, right? To clarify, I am not setting my price below my average cost, so I can still be making profit, but I'm purposely just not going to maximize profits. How do I do that? Well, because I'm a big firm, I'm able to tap into enormous economies of scale. This is actually where we're going to use the figure, by the way. Remember it said use figure 1 and extract A? Figure 1 shows that Walker's market share in this market is 55.3%. Right, you guys agree that is pretty sizable. They are a legal monopoly. Okay, so let's draw it out. Imagine this is the average cost curve. If I draw it like this. If you're on TikTok, by the way, you may want to hop onto YouTube to be able to see what I'm drawing, by the way. So imagine here is my average cost curve for this particular market. Right, let's make up some numbers. Do you guys agree that Walkers, because they have so much market share, they're able to produce a significant amount of output? So they're operating somewhere over here, Q1. And so their cost is all the way down here. They're operating near their MES, bottom of the AC curve, yeah? Okay, if I make up numbers then, let's assume that Walkers, their average cost is equal to, let's say, 20 pence, okay? And the reason why basically Walkers are able to bulk buy or able to tap into enormous economies of scale, by the way, is because they're so big, they can bulk buy things like their potatoes. So you give that as an example of their purchasing economies of scale. Walkers now charge a price, let's say initially to maximize profit of, I'm making it up, £1. Okay, so they're making 80p per packet of crisp, yeah? Imagine a firm now is considering entering the market. They're coming in because they go, okay, you know what? There's no advertising now. The market's become contestable. I can enter. And if they were to enter the market, do we all agree realistically, they have very limited amount of output. So they're going to produce somewhere over here, Q2. At Q2, their average cost is all the way up there. Let's say C2. And that's going to represent, let's say, 80p. So the average cost for that particular firm would have been 80 pence. Now, what Walkers decide to do is they go, okay, cool. We're going to cut our price to below 80p. So let's say they cut it to 60p. And the reason why they're going to do that is because from Walker's perspective, they're still making a profit, by the way. They're not maximizing profit, but they can still make profit. Can the new firm enter and charge 60 pence? Well, the answer is no, because they'll be making a loss of 20p per unit. True? Therefore, what is the point? Why are Walkers doing this? Why are Walkers charging 60p when the threat of entry has become real? This is because of the fact that they are trying to deter new firms from entering the market. That is the key word, by the way. If I'm Walkers, I'm trying to put you off. I'm trying to basically prevent you or deter you from entering the market. I don't want you to come into the market. And in the long run now, once the threat of entry has faded, so if, for example, Walkers, by, let's say, getting loads of customers to buy their products because they're quite cheap, eventually over time, firms that were thinking of coming into the market decide, ain't worth it, ain't worth coming in. Now what can Walkers do? Walkers can now re-raise their price and enjoy higher profit without losing market share. They don't need to now worry about their market share going down. That, by the way, is my analysis. Yeah. My analysis then is this: is one reason for Walkers, or one effect of Walkers reducing their prices in response to the advertising ban is to maintain market share. Then I reverse and I go, okay, the reason why is because of the fact that the advertising ban makes the market more contestable. I explain why the barriers to entry have gone down. The firms that are in the market don't have that advantage anymore. You're not going to get Gary Lineker advertising your crisps anymore. And then as a result of that, they are adopting potentially limit pricing. I now explain limit pricing. Limit pricing is where I set my price below the average cost of a potential entrant to the market, not to be confused, by the way, with predatory pricing. Predatory pricing would have been if I had set my price below my average cost and purposely made losses. I'm not making a loss here, yeah? I am setting it below the average cost of potential entrants to the market. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to deter. And again, I explain how. I go, look, they're a massive firm. They have 55.3% market share. And as a result of doing that, they can bulk buy massive quantities of things like potatoes. So their cost per unit is much, much lower. They can charge a really low price. That low price then makes it hopefully going to deter the new firms from entering the market. And as a result, the profitability in the long run goes up, or at least they maintain the market share. That's the analysis. Now, if you notice, by the way, the analysis up to now, I have not used in any way, I have not used game theory. We now need to evaluate with game theory. And in order to evaluate with game theory, let's have a quick chat. Because the problem with this question is that if prices were going up, it'd be very straightforward, because I could argue that they formed a cartel, they're colluding. And then I could evaluate it with, oh, but prisoner's dilemma. It could basically break down, right? The issue here is that they want game theory, but they've explicitly told you that prices are going down, and they've told you it's because of the advertising ban. So your analysis is what I just went through. The evaluation then is to go through a concept known as the kinked demand curve. And I need you to understand something. They're not allowed to ask a question specifically requiring you to draw the kinked demand curve, but the kinked demand curve will always be credited and be on the mark scheme for Edexcel. So if you use it, it's completely valid. Let's go through what the kinked demand curve shows here. It's a very basic theory. So let me draw it out. If I draw the following axes, those of you that are asking, by the way, on TikTok, everything that I'm drawing, you can see it on the live on YouTube, yeah? Okay, to construct the kinked demand curve, this is what you need to do. Your starting point is you basically go, okay, let's pick a random point. Let's pick a random point and call it A, like that, yeah? And we're going to assume that this is the number of crisps that Walkers are initially selling. So this is QE. And the price they're currently charging for their crisps is currently PE. Okay, right. Scenario number one. Scenario number one is that I, Walkers, decide to raise my price. According to this theory, what are you guys going to do? If you're KP and the other crisp manufacturers, like there's a company called Tato, what are you going to do? According to this theory, you're going to keep your prices unchanged. And the reason why you're going to keep your prices unchanged is because if you keep your prices lower than mine when I raise mine, loads of my customers are going to go switch over to you. Whether that's true or not, obviously we can debate that. But like in theory, we're going to go, oh, I'm going to lose loads of customers. Therefore, above the price PE, do you guys agree that demand is very, very elastic? It is very responsive. In other words, or something like that. Yeah. In other words, if I do a teeny tiny increase in the price from PE to P1, can you guys see that demand dramatically decreases from QE to Q1? Did it make sense for me to raise my price? No, it didn't. Scenario number two, I, Walkers, decide to reduce my price. Okay, if I reduce my price, what should you do? If you're the other crisp manufacturing firms, you should also reduce your prices because you don't want to lose market share to me, right? Therefore, if we all reduce our prices, yeah, we'll get a little bit more demand, but not that much more demand because we're all reducing our prices. Demand then is very, very inelastic below that price. So let's draw it like this, okay? And that we know is demand. So this is AR equals D. And now if I show you, look, if they cut the price from PE all the way down to P2, like a massive reduction in the price, look how tiny the increase in demand is. It's like negligible, right? Then does it make sense? Does it make sense for me to reduce my price from PE to P2? No, it doesn't. That is our evaluation. Because in the extract, it tells us that they're reducing their prices in response to the advertising ban. You're going to use game theory, kinked demand curve, and go, this is kind of silly. They should not be doing this. Because by reducing their prices from PE to P2, realistically, the other firms in the market are also going to cut their prices. Therefore, it would result in a less than proportionate increase in demand, as seen in the kinked demand curve, and therefore their revenue and profits are likely to go down. Does that make sense? That is the evaluation. And I only need one evaluation for this for you to get the 4 marks. That is sufficient. That is excellent evaluation. Yeah? That is how you get 12 out of 12 for that very awkward question. Cool. Let's go. Now that we've done that, let's whiz through a couple of things. Right. One of the things that did not happen in paper 1, which increases hopefully the probability of it happening in paper 3. And I hope for your sake that it does happen in paper 3, is that they did not ask a 12 marker on cost and revenue. Hopefully, you guys will get a cost and revenue diagram on Friday. I hope so anyway, yeah? If you're unlucky, it might be an 8 marker, but normally it's a 12 marker. I want to show you guys an example of a 12 marker, and we've gone through this in the paper 1 Q&A, but I just want to remind you, because it's important that you understand the technique to get 12 out of 12 if you get a cost and revenue diagram question. Right, so we're going to do June 2019, paper 1. Have a look at that together. Share screen. Cool. Right. Back. You could also do, by the way, June 2018. There was an 8 marker. It was annoying, which it was in paper 3. There was a question about Indonesia. So paper 1. And let's do June 2019. Okay. Right. Let's read the question together, and then we will, I'll share my screen in a second. Okay. 12 marker. The 12 marker says, discuss one likely reason for the rise in BT's profits. Use a cost and revenue diagram to support your answer. Okay, really straightforward. The most important thing I need to get across to you guys, in case you've not been to one of these chats before, or you've not been to one of these sessions before, is that if they explicitly ask for a cost and revenue diagram in a 12 marker, that literally means that you just need to explain what's about to shift, why it's going to shift it, summarize it, 8 out of 8 analysis. Simple as that. That's it. Yeah? That would get you all 8 analysis marks. As simple as that. Yeah? Right. Let's talk in terms of this extract. Now, to give you some context, what was happening in this data is that BT and EE were merging with one another. Now, I could do 2 things. I could talk about the fact that they could risk, they could have more market share. It could be that their costs are going down because of the fact that they've got like more market share. They could tap into greater economies of scale, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if it's a merger, I personally would always do AR and MR. Let's draw it together. If you've not watched my video on YouTube of how to draw cost and revenue diagrams, where have you been? You need to watch that before next Friday, and you need to practice and make sure that you are unreal at drawing cost and revenue diagrams. So let's draw it. Here we go. So together, we'll step by step draw it out. And then I'm going to make up a question for you guys in a second that could potentially come up. It's completely made up. I do not know if it will come up, but just for the purposes of making sure that we're comfortable drawing that, we're going to draw loads of diagrams in this session anyway. Right, first things first. Step 1 always is draw MC. I want you to just do it. Step 2 is we're going to draw AR and MR. Now, because I know AR and MR are going to shift outwards, I am purposely not going to start too high up on the Y-axis to give myself a little bit of space to maneuver. So if I draw it like here, so this is AR1 equals D1, and this is MR1, right? Profit maximization occurs where MC equals MR. So we now go to this level of output over here. This is Q1. We derive the price by going up from Q1 until we hit the demand curve. So here we go, P1. And now I always want you to make the firm make supernormal profit unless they've explicitly stated otherwise, which has never happened before, by the way. I mean, it could, but I doubt it, yeah? So let's make it so they make supernormal profit. I now manipulate my AC curve. I'm going to put it somewhere over here. Like that. I mean, that's this most disgusting AC curve in the world. I'm going to redraw that. That's horrible. Right, let's redraw that and make it look a bit more civilized. Come on. Oh, there we go. Right. Something like this. Right, that's better. It's not that much better, but it's better. Right, so again, I know the quantity. Once I have the quantity, I can tell you everything. So I got from Q1, and this is my cost, C1. Right, before you shift anything, I need you guys to understand, examiners, they are reading so many scripts. They are not bothered to look at your diagram and work it out for you. So you need to make their life easier. Your area for supernormal profit, I want you to label it with letters. So you already have P1 and C1. I'm going to label this point as A, and this point as B, so that when I now describe my diagram area, the profit area, I'd be like, oh, the initial supernormal profit was P1, A, B, C1. Clear? Right. In our diagram, or in our question, they were merging. And the merger would cause demand to increase because they have more market share. Is that fair? So let's start at a higher point on the y-axis. And we're just going to shift AR and MR parallel, sort of like this. So this is AR2 equals D2. And here we go MR2, something like that. Okay, profit maximization occurs where MC equals MR. So profit maximization, my diagram is over here now. That's Q2. The price I derive from my new demand curve, so I go up. That's P2. And remember, at the new quantity, there's a new cost. So I go up from Q2 until I hit the AC curve. Well, my cost has just a little bit gone down. And then remember to label the areas, yeah? So this is D, and this is E. Right, why did it lose? I lost connection on my board for some reason. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if we can reconnect it. 1 second. So annoying. Right, in the meantime, while I try to reconnect, in a nutshell, what would have happened on the diagram is as follows, yeah? By the way, to find it on YouTube, just search expert tuition and then click on live when you click on our channel. So that's how you find us on YouTube. Right. Yes, okay, we're back. Technical issues, I apologize. Let me share my screen again. Here we go. Right, so the diagram basically looks like this. The diagram, the effect of all of this is AR and MR shifted outwards, and as a result, the profits for the firm went up. Does that answer the question, by the way? It completely answers the question, right? Because the question was about why their profits have gone up. Here you go, their profits have gone up, yeah? Now, if you've done that and you just summarize the diagram, you've got all 8 analysis marks. So just to clarify, this is what I would do. Step 1 is I would say one factor causing profits to rise for BT is their merger with EE. I then straight away quote from the data. So I go, according to extract, blah, 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 the merger has yielded X amount of extra profit. I then say this would cause them to have more market share. So AR and MR are likely to shift outwards. And then profitability, you summarize the diagram. You now go, as can be seen in the diagram, their sales increase from Q1 to Q2. The price they charge increases from P1 to P2. And their profits increase from area P1 ABC1 to area P2 DEC2. Boom. That's the analysis. 8 marks. By the way, that should not take 8 minutes for you guys to construct that and write 8 out of 8. This is the biggest hack. You guys should be saving time in this question if it comes up. Right, let's evaluate. The evaluation here is to basically question whether profitability is going to go up. In the same way that if profitability was going down, I'd question whether it was going down. Well, here, think of something bad about a merger. Well, a bad thing about a merger is that the firm starts to experience diseconomies of scale potentially. They might become too big. They might become too big to manage. So they might start to engage in there's conflict between managers and stuff like that. 2, who might involve itself? The regulator. The regulator, the CMA might be like, whoa, what is this? And they might basically force the demerger eventually, or they might regulate more heavily. And that was actually happening in the data, by the way. They were placing a cap on how much they could charge for I think landline, whatever, something like that. Yeah. The point then is that you find reasons why profitability might not necessarily be going up. One more question, and then we're going to do 25 markers. The last question I want to do is this. Using cost and revenue diagram, assess the impact of an increase in monopsony power for Apple. Any company. It could be any company that's a big firm. What is the impact on a cost and revenue diagram of them exerting a higher degree of monopsony power? So let's remind ourselves firstly of what a monopsony is. A monopsony sounds like what? Well, it sounds like a monopoly, right? A monopoly is a powerful seller. A monopsony is a powerful buyer, right? If I have more buying power, let's say I'm Apple and I'm buying microchips or whatever, right? Do you guys agree that if I have a higher degree of monopsony power, I'm going to force down the price that I pay for those chips and for the steel? What does that do to my costs? Do you guys agree that my costs go down? What type of cost is it? It is a variable cost. Why is it a variable cost? Because each unit is now cheaper. So every single phone that I produce is going to now be cheaper to produce because, why? Because I'm exerting a higher degree of monopsony power. The question then in terms of the diagram becomes, how do you show through the lens of Apple the impact of a higher monopsony power? Well, their variable costs are going down. Let's draw it. So together, we're going to draw it. If we have the following. Quantity and then cost/revenue. Step 1. Step 1, MC. Step 2, AR and MR. So here's AR equals B. You know what? Let's do it quite fast. And this is MR. Step 3, profit maximization is this. Q1, the price, P1, right? And I want them to make supernormal profit. So let's do it like this. C1, it's not the neatest diagram in the world, but you get the gist. Okay. And I just said now they have a higher degree of monopsony power. So if they have more monopsony power, that translates into them having a reduction in their variable cost. So what do we shift? Variable cost causes both MC and AC to shift, whereas a fixed cost would only impact AC. So which one do I want you to shift first, MC or AC? You should always shift MC first if they're both shifting. You have to shift MC first. And it's simply up or down. Are your variable costs going up or they're going down? Well, they're going down. So MC is going like this. That's MC2. Yeah? What do I do now? Now, some of you are shouting, oh, I'd shift AC. Absolutely not. I ain't shifting AC yet. You need to get your new profit maximizing level of output first. So where output is Q2 and get your new price. So the price, by the way, that they're charging is going down. Finally, I get to shift the average cost curve. But remember, by the way, you need to ensure that they are hitting the new MC curve at the lowest point. and it's below the old AC curve at every level of output. So if I go like this and like this is AC2, and then my new best friend is Q2. I got from Q2 until I hit the AC curve. C2, this is D, this is E. Profits have gone up, yeah? So let's summarize this and go through it step by step, yeah? So if I got this as a question, the starting point is I would define a monopsony. I would then, from the extract, talk about the exertion of monopsony power and obviously have something like about monopsony power. It might even tell you how much they've reduced their cost by, I don't know, whatever. Then after that, you say that this would represent a decrease in variable costs for the monopsonist, so in this case, like Apple, and thus MC and AC are likely to fall. Draw the diagram, summarize the diagram. Summation diagram is a decrease in variable costs causes both MC and AC to fall. As a result, the price that Apple charge for their phones decreases from P1 to P2. Their sales increase from Q1 to Q2, and their profits increase from area P1, ABC1 to area P2, DE, C2. Right, how many marks have I got so far? That is 8 marks. Yeah, 8 marks of analysis. How straightforward is that? That is it. That's all you had to do to get 8 marks of analysis. Now, let's say that this was like something in terms of a 25 mark and I wanted to have a little bit more depth. I just want to clarify because often I get asked the question, I get told, how do you know for sure that profits are going up? How do I know? Because can you see that prices are going down, but costs are also going down as well? So how do I know for certain that they're going up? Now, there is a theoretical way of explaining it. If this doesn't make complete sense to you, really doesn't matter. If it makes sense to you, then this is something that you could potentially add in a 25 marker to give yourself a few more chains of reasoning and a bit more depth, yeah? Let's go through it. So, do you guys remember when you did AR and MR, we talked about, or you should have talked about at school, the fact that demand, elasticity changes across the demand curve. So if I have a demand curve like this, let me draw it. Well, demand has various elasticities. At the midpoint, demand is unit elastic. And then above that point over there, elasticity is greater than 1. In other words, it is elastic. And over here, it is inelastic. Okay, let me just clarify. If you think about it, this demand is literally the AR curve, right? And the midpoint of the demand curve must be where MR equals 0. And the reason why it must be where MR equals 0, straight to there, is because they are always half the slope of one another. In other words, if I got from where MR is equal to 0 and I hit the demand curve, that is 100%, whether it looks like it or not on your diagram, the midpoint of the demand curve. Okay, if you guys agree the midpoint of my demand curve then is somewhere, like if I got from MR equals 0, well, it's exactly there, that point there. But at the level of output you produced that initially at Q1, where here, like at that point of demand, right, over there, is demand elastic or inelastic? Well, demand is elastic. And therefore, it makes so much sense for Apple to reduce their prices when their costs go down. Because if they reduce their price, so let's do it, prices go down, do you guys agree demand will go up? For sure. Lower prices means that demand is going to go up. But is it elastic or inelastic? Well, we know that it's elastic, and always, by the way, will be. At profit maximization, demand is always elastic. At the profit maximizing level of output, demand is elastic. And therefore, when you reduce the price, there is a more than proportionate increase in demand. Demand, I put 2 arrows next to it. Demand doesn't just go up a little bit. Demand goes up a lot. And therefore, my revenue goes up. In other words, for this firm, their revenue is rising, their costs are falling, their supernormal profits are 100% going up there. That, by the way, is an extra chain of reasoning in a 25 marker. If you were dealing with like variable costs going down, you could be explaining it in relation to it being elastic at the profit maximizing level of output, and therefore the reduction in the price leads to a more than proportionate increase in demand, high revenue, lower cost, happy days for you. Anyways, let's go back to our question. So if the question was about the impact of the monopsony power and 12 marker, that's your analysis. Let's deal with the evaluation. The evaluation is to speak about how actually monopsony power, the regulator might intervene. The regulator might intervene to limit the degree of monopsony power. That could be one evaluation. Another evaluation could be that the farmers or producers, whoever they are, like the suppliers, could merge. If they merge, that decreases the degree of monopsony power because you're not able to exert as much power over them if they're a bigger firm. Number 3, obviously don't do 3, by the way, do 1 detailed or 2 if you've got the time. But the other thing that you could talk about, by the way, is the fact that it depends who the supplier is. Because if the supplier is already very established in their market, realistically, you're not able to actually exert monopsony power over them anyway. You might be able to exert it over the little tiny firms. But for example, can Tesco exert monopsony power over Coca-Cola? Well, the answer is definitively no, because Coca-Cola are a massive firm in and of themselves. Cool. Now that we've done that, let's rock and roll. Let's deal with the 25 marker. And the 25 marker is very unique in paper 3. I want us to do the following question, please. The 25 marker that I want us to start off with is as follows. Evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of Croatia joining the Eurozone. Now, I know this in paper 2, but now let's do it from the paper 3 perspective, yeah? So, evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of Croatia joining the Eurozone. Let's go. Most topics that you will see in past papers, most of the topics that you'll see from all of the papers they've asked so far, the macro topics lend themselves to both micro and macro points more. So you'll see more macro topics. And one of the things I really want to get across with you guys today is how to make micro points from macro, but also how to make macro points from micro. But it's very important to understand that you only need to dedicate one analysis paragraph on micro and one analysis on macro, and obviously we'd evaluate. And now bear in mind, by the way, misconception, the evaluation does not need to be micro for micro. It does not need to be macro for macro. You can mix and match at that point. It's not a big deal, yeah? You normally, realistically, would associate micro with micro and macro with macro, but it doesn't have to be that. I don't mind if you don't, yeah? And let's just talk about the micro paragraph. On Friday next week, when you're sitting this exam, when it comes to making your micro point, I need you guys to understand that I want you to, in 99% of cases, link it to a cost and revenue diagram. And if you bring it to a cost and revenue diagram and you're shifting either AR, MR, MC, AC, whatever, if you're shifting them, trust me, you're smashing it. You're absolutely obliterating it. That is how you get really high marks and get real depth into your answer. So let's deal with it in terms of the Eurozone. And I think that the macro points are more straightforward because obviously it's a macro point, right? I'm going to park the macro points for a second. Let's deal with micro. Do you guys agree that if Croatia joined the Eurozone, their firms now face easier trading conditions? It is easier for them to export their goods and also import their raw materials from other parts of the Eurozone. Fair? Let's talk about what that does then. One of the reasons why is because I no longer need to worry about unfavorable exchange rate movements negatively impacting my profit margins. So if I think of it this way, so I believe the old currency for Croatia was the kuna. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. Let's go with the kuna. I'm making it up. It might not be. Let's say hypothetically that 1 kuna is initially equal to €1. Yeah. And the vast majority of the trade that the Croatian firm does this is real world knowledge, is with Italy and Germany. Okay, that's their main trading partner. So initially they're trading, they're exporting a lot of their goods. Suddenly now the kuna, it massively depreciates. Let's say that now 1 kuna can only buy you, I don't know, 0.2 euros. Okay. Do you guys agree that if you're in a contract and you're a firm selling to Germany, that now every single thing that you're selling to Germany is cheaper? You're not making anywhere near as much money as you were before, yeah? That is a problem. Your profit margins are being squeezed, right? And also, by the way, your imports are now more expensive, like importing euro materials are now more expensive. But if now you join the Eurozone, can €1 ever be stronger or weaker than another euro? No, it can't. Therefore, do you agree that realistically it is easier for you to trade? There's going to be trade creation. But now we're going to deal with trade creation on a micro level by talking about it from the perspective of you as a firm. What is going to happen to you? Well, for you as a firm, do you agree that you can sell more goods and services? Your demand is going to shift outwards. AR and MR shift outwards. And that is a diagram I already drew earlier today. I don't know if I can get it back. But AR and MR shift outwards, and we have a million things that we could say here. Remember, it's a 25 marker, yeah? So you know what? Let me actually get that diagram up because it'll be useful to look at. Where is it? The one that had AR and MR shifting out? Here we go. Right, this one. Here's our diagram. Our diagram is this. AR and MR shift outwards. Now, the consequences. You can talk about profitability is going to go up, and we'll deal with that in a second. But there's an extra layer of bonuses to like dig up. One is prices go up. 2, sales go up. 3, though. Do you notice something happened on my diagram? The costs went down. Why did the costs go down? The costs went down because the firm is able to better tap into economies of scale. That's an extra chain of reasoning for you. Example of economy of scale here. Now, I normally would want you guys to do purchasing economies of scale. I don't mind. It works really well here. They can bulk buy in larger quantity. I think there's an even better one for this one. If I'm dealing with a trading block, I could talk about managerial economies of scale because there's free movement of labor. The Croatian firms can now attract the most talented workers from across the block. And as a result, this is managerial economies of scale. Their costs per unit are going down. Then we talk about their profitability. What's happening to their profitability? Their profitability is going up. What can they do with their profits? Give me examples of what they could do. Oh, the firms can invest into like new technology and into R&D. If you can specify, like, I don't know, let's say a car manufacturing firm, they might I don't know, do self-driving cars, or they might invest into like better um, battery-powered cars, electric cars, blah, 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 right? All of this results in higher levels of dynamic efficiency. That is our analysis. And that is, wow, analysis, by the way. That's top level. Let's evaluate. Evaluation. The evaluation is very straightforward. Again, I can take macro concepts and turn them micro very easily. One of the macro problems of joining a monetary union is that you become too interdependent upon one another. Okay, if you're suddenly selling a lot more, but a lot more of your sales is to Italy and Germany, what if Italy and Germany mismanage their economy? How's that going to go for you? Well, that's going to go very badly for you because suddenly your demand is going to shift inwards again. That's a problem, right? So you could talk about that. You can also, by the way, discuss the fact that by joining a monetary union, there might be more competition. They're now having to basically fend against all the countries and all the firms in those countries. So actually, potentially, their demand might not go up, might go down. That is the evaluation. Make sense? You can evaluate by talking about how they are too interdependent. And the consequences of interdependency is the fact that essentially, if their main trading partners go through an economic downturn, it's going to negatively impact them. Cool? That's the micro. Let's deal with the macro. Macro, you have a lot of choice, to be honest. I don't mind which points you do. The one personally that I probably would do is the fact that it might attract more foreign direct investment, FDI, because of the fact that TNCs are incentivized to set up in countries where they are part of a bloc like this. They get to take advantage of the easier trading conditions. They don't need to worry about, for example, the exchange rate moving. Number two is they can take advantage of the fact that there are no common external tariffs. They are part of the bloc. A country, by the way, that has massively benefited from being in the Eurozone is the Republic of Ireland. If you want to read an extract about it, June 2016, Unit 4, Old Spec, has a question about Ireland, and literally the amount of data there is amazing. It was all about how like a lot of tech companies have set up there, Microsoft, Google, I think, are there, Pfizer, I know some tech company, but like Johnson & Johnson. Anyways, massive tech giants and big companies have gone and set up in Ireland, partly because corporation tax is really low, but also because they're in the Eurozone. So maybe suddenly there might be an influx of FDI into Croatia, and that is great because of the fact that investment is a component of AD. AD therefore is likely to shift outwards. Investment is also an injection into the circular flow of income, and so there's likely to be a positive multiplier effect. You can go crazy, like you've got the whole analysis paragraph just like one after the other really quickly. You could even talk about how FDI is great because of the fact that the TNC, it may be in their interest to improve the infrastructure of that country because it makes their business operations smoother. One of the things that Croatia have really benefited from in the last like 10 years or so is tourism, right? Tourism has boomed, partly, by the way, because of Game of Thrones, a little knowledge for you guys. But tourism, if you're a hotel chain like Hilton, do you guys agree that it makes sense for you to ensure that people can get from the airport, to your hotel? What might you do? You might invest into improving the roads. But if you improve the roads, you agree on a macro level that increases the productive capacity of the economy. Wow, LRAS shifts out. Do you guys agree that if they improve the roads on a micro level, it leads to external economies of scale? Wow. All of this, you're spoiled for choice, yeah? That is the analysis. The evaluation for this question, honestly, you've got no choice, yeah? Listen, if you get a question about the Eurozone, specifically a monetary union or any monetary union, I obligate you to evaluate by talking about how by joining a monetary union, you lose monetary independence. You no longer can set your own interest rates. And I want to really make sure this makes sense. So let's go back. I may have done this in paper 2. I can't remember what I have and haven't done, but this is too important to not to go through again. Let's go through it. So, monetary independence. The two contrasting examples that I want you to remember are Germany and Greece. Whilst the Greek economy was in a deep recession, the German economy was booming. Now, the central bank, the Eurozone, the European Central Bank, have to set an interest rate that they say one size fits all. One size does not and has not fit all. Because think about what you need. Let's do some monetary policy revision together, yeah? Okay, so if I told you that I have loads of growth in my economy, so if I quickly draw this out like rough, so here's the price level, real output. Let's say this is Germany. Germany is somewhere over there, right? So their economy is doing amazingly well. But the thing about economic growth is that people are spending loads of money. So there's a lot of demand pull inflation. The economy is like what we describe as like overheating. Yeah. Okay. So if I have this, what kind of interest rate would I need to relieve the inflationary pressure? Would you guys agree that I need to raise the interest rate? Because if I raise the interest rate, I incentivize Germans to save money. and therefore consumption goes down and AD would shift inwards. I'll get it to go like that. Yeah? Okay, that's Germany. All right, let's deal with Greece now. Greece are over here. Greece are in a state of absolute panic. Like, this is a disaster. They're in a deep recession. What kind of interest rate do they need? They need a low interest rate. Agreed? Why do they need a low interest rate? Because the low interest rate would incentivize people to spend rather than save, and AD would shift out. So they want a low interest rate to shift AD out to like here. Can the European Central Bank cater to both countries' needs? Absolutely no. And this is a risk now. Because if you're Croatia and you join the Eurozone, and suddenly now, let's say that you have a major recession, but the other Eurozone countries are doing pretty well. The issue that you have is that realistically, the central bank, the Eurozone, the ECB, are not going to set an interest rate catered to you. They're going to have it as like whatever the average is. You can no longer set your own interest rate. That is a massive, massive problem. That is the go-to point in this essay, and I need you to make sure that you explain that. That is your go-to eval, yeah? That is the biggest cost associated with joining a monetary union by an absolute country mile. Cool? That's our first essay. Let's go. Another essay. Let's deal with, I am going to do, by the way, loads of stuff on development because I know it hasn't come up yet. Just to clarify, by the way, just because things have come up doesn't mean they can't come up again. June 2019, 25 marker was about basically cartels and collusion, basically in theory, yeah? And then June 2019, as we started off with this Q&A, was again game theory. So everyone was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do game theory. I was like, no, you could get examined on it again. Don't think that it won't come up again. It obviously decreases the chances a little bit, but be aware of everything. Yeah, like be going into this exam knowing all the topics. Right, let's do what I regard as the most disgusting, evil question that they could ask. I have posted this essay actually on our social media platform, so you can actually read my answer. But I want to explain it to you guys to make sure that you actually understand it. The essay title is as follows: evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of market failure in the financial sector. Let's talk about it. Let me just take some Red Bull and let's go. So, evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of market failure in the financial sector. This is an atrocious question. But after hopefully we go through it, this becomes an amazing question for you guys. Let's start. Let's do some revision. There are various market failures that you need to know about, one of which came up in paper 2 without kind of bringing that back and like going over it because it's gone, it's in the past. One of them is basically something called market rigging or collusion, right? So banks have in the past colluded with one another to either set interest rates really high and manipulate like something called LIBOR. Anyways, that is the type of market failure. Another type of market failure is externalities. Externalities in the sense that if a bank fails or if they mismanage their affairs, does it just impact them? Well, obviously not, because people who save money in the banks, basically everyone, they're going to lose their savings, and therefore there's going to be a massive reduction in consumption. There's going to be a massive recession, really big problem. Other issues, another externality is the fact that these banks, firms bank with them, they put their money there. So again, if these banks collapse, firms go and shut down, they have to lay off workers, they can't invest as much, blah, 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 blah. Yeah? Anyways, those other market failures is something called moral hazard, which we're definitely going to talk about today. Moral hazard is the idea that if you get bailed out, you have an expectation that you're going to get bailed out again in the future. In other words, when the government bailed out the likes of RBS, Lloyd's, and Northern Rock, it becomes an expectation that you're going to get bailed out again in the future. What are you therefore likely to do today? You're likely to basically pursue stupid risk again, going, that's fine. The government will bail me out anyway, so who cares, right? In development, by the way, one of the things about development is the fact that you might get debt relief, you might get debt cancellation. But the issue with debt relief is the fact that if there's debt relief, it becomes an expectation again in the future that they're going to get debt relief in the future, so they pursue irresponsible policies today. Right, let's deal with this. The harder part of this is micro. Let's deal with micro. If I told you guys the financial crash, and I will post a video on this, by the way, it isn't my video, it's one of the best videos I've ever seen on YouTube. It explains the market, the financial crash, like, wow, yeah? It will be posted underneath the YouTube video. I'll do it later today. Anyways, that video details what happened in the financial crash. It's a very good explanation. But in a nutshell, one of the things that you should know about is the fact that there was a housing market bubble where house prices were really, really inflated. And eventually, as all bubbles, they burst. It popped, yeah? Okay, so let's assume hypothetically the following. So pardon my atrocious art. I'm very bad at art, but here we go. This is going to be a house. There we go, lovely house. Here's my little house. Okay. The window is bent, but anyways. So here's my house, and let's assume hypothetically that I bought that house in the middle of the bubble. I didn't know there was a bubble. There was a bubble. Yeah. So I bought the house for, let's say, £700,000. Okay. Now, most people do not have £700,000 lying around in their back pocket. So what do? They basically go and save up a certain amount of money. They pay that towards the house, and then they go and get a deposit. Yeah. Sorry, they go get a mortgage, which is basically the bank lend them money, or the mortgage lender provides them a loan for the house, and they now pay back that mortgage over 20, 25, 30 years. Let's assume, to make our life easier, that the mortgage, here's the mortgage, is equivalent to £600,000. Okay? So I put down £100,000 of my own money, and I borrowed £600,000 from this bank. Okay, this is what's going to happen. Now the financial crash occurs. Banks have basically created a bubble in the market, and as a result, the bubble is burst. And the problem is it turns out my house is not worth £700,000, not what I thought it was. My house is actually worth £100,000. Oh dear. Right. I am suffering from a concept known as negative equity. Right. This is what negative equity means. Negative equity is a fancy way of basically saying that even if I sold my house today, so do you guys agree? If I sell my house now, I sell it for £100,000. Am I debt free? Well, no, because I still owe the bank another £500,000 of debt. This is a huge problem now, because either I have to be stuck in my house, I have no choice but to basically continue residing in that house. But the other issue is if I default, right? So some people did default. Default means you turn around to the bank and go, take the house. I don't want the house. If I default, though, that will massively have a negative impact on my credit rating. Banks will not trust me. And so when I go and apply for another loan, so let's assume I don't have £100,000 in my back pocket to now go and buy the house. I already paid that deposit before. I now am looking for another house. So even though the house prices have gone down, am I going to be able to get a loan from a bank? Is any bank going to lend to me considering I just defaulted? Well, of course not, right? They're going to be like, no, last time you took out a massive loan, you didn't pay it back. No, you're not getting a loan. The issue then is this. The issue is that I now, because I suffer from negative equity, in other words, my asset is worth less than my mortgage amount. What happens now is that I suffer from geographical immobility of labor. Labor becomes geographically immobile. If I get a job offer, let's say I get a job offer in the north of England. So I don't know, in Manchester, yeah? Because Man United won the FA Cup. Come on. Anyways, so if I get a job offer in Manchester and I want to move, but the thing is, I can't sell my house. If I sell my house, I'm still in £500,000 of debt. Can I take up that job in Manchester? Well, realistically, no. And therefore, the market failure that occurred in the financial sector has just created a market failure in the labor market as well. That is a wicked analysis, by the way. Like, that is top level. Notice, by the way, that particular analysis, there wasn't really a diagram. There isn't an obvious diagram here. I wouldn't do a diagram. So that is the analysis, yeah? Let's evaluate. And the evaluation, to be honest with you, look, this is the thing about this paper and preparing for this paper. Unlike papers 1 and 2, where the 25 marker was very isolated, the 25 marker here is relevant to the data. So I might tell you points in this stream, but in the data, you read a point and it might be easier to explain, or might be an evaluation there that is better. Please go with the data. The data will guide you. It will help you. You might get points that I haven't thought of that are in the data. Use the data. Use the data very wisely. Now, here, generically, there are 2 things that I can say. Number 1, the first thing I could talk about is the fact that, do you guys agree that over time, house prices have gone back up? So yes, they went down to £100,000, but they've gone back up in the long run. So house prices have since recovered. So then it's not a big deal. I'm paying off an asset, but the asset is now worth, again, let's say at least £600,000, not the end of the world. But number 2 is a really clever point that would not have been in the mark scheme pre-COVID, but is probably on the mark scheme now. I know it will be. What could I talk about? You know how I said I got offered a job in Manchester and I couldn't take it? Well, do you guys agree that now a lot of people are able to work from home? Therefore, do I need to physically leave my house? No, I don't. In other words, is it as big a deal if I'm suffering from negative equity? Maybe not. For certain jobs, yeah, still, like if it requires like physical labor, but a lot of jobs can now be conducted online from home. Therefore, you don't physically need to move. That is our evaluation. Let's deal with the analysis. I'm going to give you guys 2 separate analyses that you could do. I don't mind which one you do. Bear in mind, by the way, if you do the same point, but explain it through macro and explain it through micro, completely fine. You can do that. I wouldn't if I could avoid it, just because it's a bit boring, but I don't mind, by the way. If you're stuck and you don't know how to develop both micro and macro, but you know that, okay, that point, I can make a micro point out of it, or I can make a macro point out of it, do it. Can I show you what I mean? The macro point that I could do here is that there was, when house prices collapsed, significant negative wealth effect. If your house is worth less, Do you have more or less confidence? Do you guys agree that you have significantly less confidence? Therefore, consumption is likely to dramatically decrease here. Yeah. Consumption fell, AD would have shifted inwards, economic growth would have contracted, unemployment went up. Could drag the point out more, by the way, by saying that those individuals that lose their jobs are going to spend less in the economy. And because labor is derived demand, there'll be less demand for goods and services, so less demand for labor. Therefore, even more unemployment. We got pushed into a recession. All of that, really easy. Just straightforward AD shifting inwards and summarize the bad things about that. Yeah? I'm going to give you an alternative that I think is slightly better. The alternative is the government had to bail out these banks. The government had to bail these banks out because if they didn't bail them out, it would have resulted in even more economic damage. But that creates two issues that we can now talk about. Number one, was it cheap to bail out the banks? How much money did the government bail them out with? The government spent billions. If you look at data, by the way, June 2019, paper 3, in fact, you know what, let me show you because it's interesting to see it. Right, June 17, paper 3 has this funky data set. Paper 3? So just with this, to get some energy. Paper 3. June 2017, here we go. Right. So June 2017, paper 3 has this data set about the UK. This is all real knowledge, by the way, yeah? Please look at this. This is the UK's fiscal deficit. Look at 2007 to 2009. We go from a deficit of about 40 billion pounds to nearly 160 billion. That is mental. And if you look at figure 4, by the way, figure 4 shows debt as a percentage of GDP. 2007, we're hovering around 35% of GDP. 2009, just 2 years later, it is 60%. Debt went through the roof. And now we can create two problems or two things. One, massive moral hazard. Do you guys agree that this is a crazy moral hazard because of the fact that now the banks, because they got bailed out, there's an expectation in the future that they're going to get bailed out again in the future. So what do? They start to basically pursue really risky policy. And number two, fiscal deficit goes up. You should all know this from the paper 2 stream and your 10 market the other day. Higher fiscal deficit leads to higher national debt. Higher national debt results in potentially the credit rating for the UK economy going down. If that happens, the demand for UK bonds might go down. The price of UK bonds goes down. The interest on UK bonds, though, the yield goes up. Is it harder or easier for the government to service their debts, to pay off their debts? Well, it is harder for the government to now pay off their debts. As a result, it means that the cost of borrowing for the government has gone up. That is a problem. That's the analysis. Gorgeous. Let's evaluate. The evaluation, again, it depends on the data, to be honest with you. But you can evaluate by talking about the good things about the government bailing out the banks. And also that, to be honest with you, they have added in restrictions to try and prevent this from happening. So, for example, if you read the June 2019 paper 2, it has an extract about how there's an increase in what's called the reserve ratio. Now, you don't need to know that in any meaningful detail for Edexcel, but essentially banks are now being obligated to keep more money in their accounts and not, for example, like invest as much for like a rainy day. So these reserve ratios have now changed as a byproduct of the financial crash. So as a result, you could argue that maybe this is less likely to happen again in the future. So there's not as much of a moral hazard, maybe, but also the fact that actually it is pretty useful for the government to have invested money into the economy and to save the banks, because otherwise there would have been a deep recession and they prevented that from being too deep. It would have resulted in loads of job losses in the financial services sector, etc., etc., etc. That is the evaluation, and that is that essay done. Yeah? Cool. Let's do some revision together. And what I want us to revise is economic development. Now, just because economic development hasn't come up doesn't mean it will definitely come up. Obviously, I think it is a fairly decent chance that economic development will come up. But let's just revise the two parts. There's limitations to economic development, and there are strategies to promote economic development. So let's go through loads of limitations first, and then we'll ease into like strategies as well. Right, let's go. These are the theories that I need you to know. Oh, actually, my board is not shared. Let me share my screen. Right, their screen. Okay. Number one. First is something called Harrod-Domar savings gap. Right, let's go through them one at a time. And can I explain what these are? Yeah? First things first. Harrod-Domar savings gap says that in many developing countries, the savings rate tends to be very, very low. And the logic of why it is so low is because the GDP per capita, so the average earnings of someone in this economy, tends to be super duper low. The issue then is this. One is they don't have the money to save. But also, banks don't have the incentive to set up in countries where savings are low, because why would I, if I'm a bank, go to a country where no one is putting money in the bank? That's how I grow my money, right? So even those individuals in the economy that want to save, they don't really have the means to save. It's very difficult for them to actually park their money in a bank. The problem then is this: if there is a lack of savings, firms in these countries struggle to borrow money for investment purposes. And this creates an issue because investment is crucial for both long-term and short-term growth. It is short-term because of the fact that investment is a component of aggregate demand, but it's long-term because of the fact that investment also causes the LRAS curve, the productive capacity of your economy, to shift outwards. True? This is the issue then. In a nutshell, you go, low savings leads to low investment, low capital accumulation, fancy way of saying the rate at which your capital accumulates, and thus low economic development. Cool? Nice and easy. That is our analysis. If we were to evaluate that, by the way, two things. One is that a lot of these countries now receive international aid. And international aid means they don't need to spend all of their limited income on basic necessities because of the fact that they're getting food and water and other things in the form of aid. Number two is technology. Technology has made it far easier for people to save. Imagine I own a fruit stand, and do you agree? All I need to do is get a card reader and now take digital payments. Whereas before, I would have needed to lug around loads of money to basically take to the bank. I don't need to do that anymore. It is far easier for me to save. Cool? So that's the savings gap. That's analysis, that's evaluation. Number two, Harrodoma model again. Harrodoma. This time, the foreign exchange gap. Let's talk about it. Right. Hopefully, if you came to the theme two or the paper two Q&A, I talked a lot about like foreign reserves and what those are. Foreign reserves are basically other currencies that are not your currency. For example, in the UK, foreign reserves would be dollars, euros, yen, any other currency. Yeah. Now, the benefit of having foreign reserves is that I can use my foreign reserves to manipulate my exchange rate if I need to, like Brazil. But what I can also do is I can import using my foreign reserves. Okay, so let's assume the following. Imagine I live in Ghana, yeah? So Ghana's currency is the CD from June 2016. If I now want to import capital machinery from, let's say, Germany, will a German manufacturing firm accept the Ghanaian currency for their manufactured good, for their like capital? The answer is obviously no. What will they want you to pay them? And they want you to pay them in euros. But the problem is this, is that if you look at the countries in the developing world, their currencies tend to be very weak and over time tend to get weaker. And the problem is that means that they need to convert more and more of their weak currency to be able to buy €1, to be able to buy $1, right? Is it easy or difficult for them to therefore import capital machinery? Well, if they have insufficient levels of foreign reserves, they're going to struggle to be able to import raw materials, and therefore they're unable to develop sectors like manufacturing, Lewis model, which we'll talk about later. Yeah, this is a big problem. So they struggle to develop sectors like manufacturing because of the fact that they don't have enough foreign reserves to be able to import, and their currency tends to be really weak. That is number two. Let's evaluate it. By the way, the other thing about foreign exchange gap, really quickly, which is really good as well, is that their debt, international debt, is often quoted in international currency, in dollars, sorry. Yeah. In the 2021 paper, or 2020 paper, sorry, paper 3, it has an extract, I think I did it with you guys, it was about Turkey. And it was all about how Turkey was heavily indebted in foreign currency. If they don't have a lot of foreign reserves then, and their currency gets weaker, they're going to need to convert more and more of their lira to buy $1 and service their debt. Big, big problem. Make sense? So that, cool. Let's evaluate it. Easy evaluation here, by the way. The easy evaluation here is to talk about maybe they could develop sectors like tourism. By the way, I would love it if they ask you a question just about tourism. We'll deal with that as a strategy in a moment. It makes a lot of sense because of COVID and stuff like that. So who knows? Could be, yeah? Anyways, tourism means that you get a massive stock of foreign reserves because all these people from abroad come into your economy and bring their foreign reserves. Number 3, a massive one. Primary product dependency. Right, this is enormous. This could be a 12 marker. This could also, by the way, be a 25 marker, yeah? I would love this to be a 25 marker. Now, they haven't asked it explicitly in this format. They asked about primary product dependency, by the way, in June 2017, question 1C, about Chile. But they've normally asked it as the impact of volatile commodity prices, yeah? Now, they asked that, for example, June 2018, paper 3, it was about Indonesia, and their main export was like coal, yeah? Anyways, can I deal with both of them? Can I deal with the question about volatile markets, and I'll deal with prime product dependency? Let's start with volatile markets. Volatile markets, the reason why it's an issue is as follows. So volatile markets means the price of commodities, like let's say cocoa for the Ivory Coast, typically it does something like this. So here's right, it's going wild like this. And part of the reason why, by the way, is because of the fact that it's vulnerable to weather conditions like external shocks, like adverse weather. Yeah. So, for example, if the price plummets down here, the issue that you have, and we can do this on a micro level or a macro level, I don't mind. On a micro level, we can go, okay, if the price of cocoa goes down, so the price is down. Do we all agree that price is going down, demand is going to basically go up? Is that fair? But think about commodities, agricultural products in particular, but also things like oil, and I mean, that's agriculture as well, but like even like metals, yeah? Do you guys agree that the demand, the PED for these things is inelastic? It always will be inelastic, realistically. Therefore, is demand dramatically increasing or only a tiny bit? Well, if it's inelastic, demand isn't really changing very much. Hence, prices are going down more than demand is going up. Your revenue then, is it going up or going down? Well, you're making less revenue. So when prices plummet, they're in big trouble. They are making far less revenue. But vice versa, by the way, is what about when the prices are really high? So that's, by the way, this I deal with in terms of PED. What about in terms of higher prices? Let's say there's a sudden burst in the demand for cocoa for whatever reason, yeah? As a cocoa farmer, are you able to scale up your production significantly? Well, the answer is no. And the reason why is because the PES is also very inelastic. Now we're looking at it through the lens of supply. Why? Think about how long it takes for a cocoa tree to harvest. I've said this in a million lives, I think, yeah? Basically, 5 years. It takes about 5 years for a cocoa tree to harvest. Therefore, okay, even if the price of cocoa dramatically increases right now, are you able to suddenly scale up your cocoa production? No, you can't. As a result, are you making significantly more revenue and profit? No, you're not. In both scenarios, you're worse off. Yeah? Now, what's the issue with that? The issue with that is obviously that revenue and profits are likely to be very low in this industry, but also the volatility. The volatility here, do you guys agree that that would translate into it being very difficult for you to plan ahead with any meaningful conviction? You're always worried about there might be a massive decline in the price. And if that's the case, investment in this industry is likely to be low. And if investment is low, do you guys agree their capital machinery, like the tractors and machines they use, whatever it is that they use to kind of farm their farm, like, yeah, their machines are dying out. They're depreciating. What can I draw? Remember how I said I want you to bring it back to cost and revenue. Bring it back to cost and revenue when you can. Let's do it. If their machines are becoming outdated, their costs are going up. Let's draw it. I'm not going to draw a million of these, by the way, because like it's starting to become a bit repetitive. Hopefully you guys realize how straightforward this is. But so here we go. So let's go MC, AR equals D, marginal revenue. Here's the output. Here's P1. Here's AC. A, B. All right, cool. Let's chat. So do you guys agree that we just said that their machines, they're not investing very much. They're scared to invest. And so because they're not investing very much, that translates into their costs going up because their machines are starting to basically become outdated. They're starting to become rusty. Their variable costs therefore go up. MC and AC are going to go up. Let's do it. MC up. Here we go. MC2. So MC now equals MR here. This is the new level of output. Their price is going up. P2. And now their cost is going to go up as well. So average cost. I'm going to exaggerate it to give myself a bit of breathing space. I'm going to make them make a loss. AC2. C2. D. E. Right. My firm, by the way, are now making losses. No problem if yours didn't, by the way, if they were making super normal and then it went down to normal or super normal and smaller super normal. The gist of the point is what is happening to their profits? Their profits are going to start going down. And if their profits are going down, you can add one more layer to give it a little cherry on top. Well, actually, 2 layers, actually, I lie. One, you can say they have less profits to invest into R&D. So technology is going to get even worse. But number 2 is some of these firms might skepta, shut down. Some of these firms might exit the market. They're going to leave. They're going to shut down, creating more job losses and all of that. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah? Wow. Amazing. That's our first analysis. Yeah? Let's evaluate. The evaluation here, you can use macro. And macro, by the way, is totally fine to evaluate micro, even though I can make this a micro point anyway. And we're going to use the financial sector. One of the roles of the financial sector is to provide something called forward markets. This is how a forward market works. A forward market is a market, or basically where you in advance agree to sell your commodity for a fixed price, and you are absolutely guaranteed to receive that price regardless of what happens to the market price. You are nailed on to get that price in the future. Therefore, do you agree that that makes it easier for you to plan ahead? You will know in advance what price you're getting. Therefore, you can basically make plans around that and invest around that particular price. Clear? That is the evaluation for the micro. Let's deal with the macro. The macro is so straightforward. The macro, in terms of volatile commodity prices, is to be speaking about how, when the prices plummet, if this is the main source of revenue in the country, and by the way, the extract will be so helpful here. So as an example, if I look at, let me show you. Let's do, 1 second, let's open up. Paper 2, 2020. Right, where is it? There's a question about the Ivory Coast. I may have shown you guys this last, but I need you to see it. 2020, here we go. Ivory Coast. Hello, Ivory Coast. Right, figure 2. Hello, 54% of Ivory Coast exports are cocoa beans and cocoa products. Okay, 2 things. Do you guys agree that realistically, 1, it's going to mean that there's loads of farmers, there's loads of people working on these farms, so a lot of unemployment if it collapses. 2, that this is their main export earning. And 3, the government generate most of their tax revenue from this industry. Okay, what if cocoa prices collapse? If cocoa prices collapse, do you guys agree that government tax revenue is going to be on the floor? Fiscal deficit is going up. National debt going up. I could do credit rating going down if I wanted to. Maybe I don't want to do that. I could do something else. I could talk about how their export earnings are going down. Oh, lovely. Their current account is getting better or worse? It's getting worse. But guess what? X minus M is also a component of AD. AD, therefore, is going to shift inwards. Economic growth is going to go down. Unemployment is going to go up. Do they employ loads of people in this sector? Oh my days, they employ so many people in this sector. This is a catastrophe. You're spoiled for choice. You just go through the impact of the prices collapsing and how that is awful for the economy. That's your macro. How easy is that? Let's evaluate. I think a clever evaluation, and it's the evaluation they have in the June 2018 paper about coal for Indonesia, is to be talking about how when the prices are booming, so let's say cocoa prices are really high and you're earning a lot of money, export earnings are pretty high, government tax revenue is really high, that was the chance for the government to invest that to diversify the economy. So maybe actually they took the revenue they generated when there was a boom and invested that money into areas like manufacturing or developing the tourism sector or whatever sector it is, yeah, that they diversify. You can even bring in, without going crazy because it's an evaluation, the Lewis model, which I'll do later on when we revise, yeah? Basically, the point is that you can translate that into when prices were high, that was the opportunity for the government to diversify the economy, and maybe they did. And if they did diversify the economy, do you guys agree that that means that the shocks to that sector are no longer as bad because they've got other sectors that they can fall back on? Cool. That is how to answer it in terms of volatile markets. Let's now answer it instead by talking about what's it called? The impact, micro and macroeconomic effect of primary product dependency. Right. The first half of this essay that I just did, volatile prices, the micro stuff that I just did, keep it exactly as it is. Leave it, don't touch it. That's beautiful. As it is, let's leave it like that. The macro point, though, you could do the one I just did, by the way, again, but let's make it a bit more interesting. What we're instead going to do is we're going to talk about Protectionism. We're going to talk about a theory called Protectionism, which says that countries that export commodities, they will experience a deterioration in their terms of trade. Let's talk about why. Again, I apologize if I've gone through this before in a previous stream. Some of you are new. Let's revise anyway, yeah? This is what the concept is. The concept is that Protectionism argues that over time, countries that are exporting commodities like coal, cocoa, whatever it might be, over time, that will enable them to buy less and less from the world markets, yeah? And the reason why is because the YED for manufactured goods typically is greater than the YED for commodities, for primary products. Let's dissect why that is. YED is basically how responsive is your demand for a particular good when your income goes up or down, right? Let's assume that both of these goods are normal goods. In other words, as my income goes up, I'm going to buy more manufactured goods and I'm going to buy more commodities, primary products, right? Do you guys agree that realistically, if your income doubled, you are not going to double the amount of food that you consume. You're not going to go crazy and start eating everything in sight, right? What you will do is you might switch to higher quality food. And yeah, you might consume a little bit more food, but you're not going to go crazy. Your demand then for things like food is very inelastic, YED inelastic. Whereas manufactured goods, right? A manufactured good is like a laptop, a TV, a car. If my income goes up and I buy a second laptop, that represents a 100% increase in the number of laptops that I now own. I go from one laptop to two laptops. Do you guys agree? Demand went up a lot, yeah? Okay. Let's work out then why this causes terms of trade to deteriorate for countries like the Ivory Coast. So I'm going to draw it out. Here we go. So let's share screen. So here is Ivory Coast. Here's Germany. Right, quantity, price. Demand, D1, S1. Right, can we make our life easier and just assume that the market price of commodities, primary products, is going to be the same as manufactured goods start with? Okay. So Germany, in this example over here, they are basically, what's it called? Manufactured goods, and Ivory Coast are obviously primary products, yeah? Now, if I'm in the Ivory Coast and I export 1 unit, so I sell 1 unit to the world, how much can I buy from Germany? Well, in this example, very simple, 1 for 1, because they're the same price, yeah? Those of you that are on TikTok, by the way, you should come over to YouTube to be able to watch what I'm drawing, yeah? Okay, now over time, global incomes are always rising. There are very few exceptions to that, like the global financial crash and the Great Depression. Other than that, global incomes are pretty much always on the rise. So we go, okay, demand for commodities like cocoa will go up, but they are income inelastic. So let's shift demand, but only a teeny tiny bit like this. P2. This is Q2. P2. Right, so good for Ivory Coast, because look, great for them. They're going to now be able to charge a higher price for their commodity. The problem they have, though, is that Germany, when incomes go up around the world, demand for their product doesn't just shift a little bit, it goes crazy. It goes like that, according to this theory. P2. Right, what's the issue? You know how earlier I said that if I, in Ivory Coast, export 1 unit, I was able to import 1 unit. Is that still the case here? Well, the answer is definitively no. In other words, their terms of trade are likely to be weak. Right, can I just quickly go through terms of trade? Terms of trade is the price index of exports over the price index of imports times 100. Okay. It is purely the monetary value of exports relative to the monetary value of your imports, yeah? So my example a second ago, the top of my fraction went up. Just a little bit, right? The prices for the Ivory Coast went up from P1 to P2, just a tiny bit. The issue they had, though, is that all their imports become way, way more expensive. So that overall causes the fraction to go down, yeah? Why is it a problem, though, for developing countries to have weak terms of trade? The reason why it is a problem for them to have weak terms of trade is because those countries like the Ivory Coast badly need to be importing capital machinery to develop sectors like manufacturing. They need to be able to import capital and technology and things like that. Well, if their terms of trade are weak, they're going to struggle to be able to do that. And bear in mind, by the way, they also have insufficient levels of foreign reserves. That makes it even more problematic. That is your analysis, and it is gold. Yeah, that is your analysis. Let's evaluate. How do I evaluate? Well, we're going to do 3 evaluations in one. There's multiple evaluations that you could do. I'm going to give you guys 3 evaluations, one after the other, that you put together into a paragraph, and it's very effective. Number 1, the first evaluation is that there are examples in real life of countries that have done amazing through their primary products. So the idea that primary dependency is like a recipe for disaster always is not true. The examples I want you to remember are Botswana with diamonds, Chile with copper, June 2017, paper 3, read it. And number 3, United Arab Emirates or Saudi, whichever one you want, with oil. These are all economies that have primary products and have all done well as a result of it. Yeah, that is number 1. Number two is, according to economic theory, if a country has a comparative advantage in the production of a primary product, what should they do? They should specialize, because by specializing, it results in a more efficient allocation of global resources and therefore higher living standards. And now you can explain to me why, for example, the Ivory Coast would have a comparative advantage when it comes to cocoa. Why would they? Well, they have a comparative advantage in cocoa because they have the exact right climate to grow cocoa beans. Yeah, so that's why. Yeah, that's number 2. Number three is some real world knowledge. Now, some of you are asking in relation to how much real world knowledge do you need to know. In all honesty, you don't need to know anything. I mean, like, have a little bit, because this question or this paper, the extract is relevant to the 25 marker, but it's more for you to know. Yeah. This last bit, by the way, I would know though for this particular question because it is really useful. Between the year 2000 and the middle of 2008, which is basically a financial crash around there, the price of commodities, especially oil, by the way, were booming. They were sky high, whilst the price of manufactured goods were going down. Now, you don't need to know why, by the way, but can I very quickly, for your peace of mind, explain why? It was mainly China. Because the Chinese economy was growing rapidly. And think about what sector they specialize in. They specialize in manufacturing. So in order for them to basically build their manufacturing sector, they were importing loads of oil. They were buying up loads of oil. So oil prices were going up. Also, by the way, loads of Chinese people were entering into the middle classes. So demand for things like sugar snap, coffee beans, or food basically was going up, especially, by the way, Brazil. So again, June 2013, I did it with you guys the other day. June 2013, Unit 4 has a whole extract about how like the commodity boom was occurring at that time. And Brazil was a big benefactor of it. Yeah, they were benefiting because of how much demand there was from China. Anyways, in a nutshell, demand was skyrocketing for commodities. At the same time, because China were massively increasing the supply of manufactured goods, what was happening to the price of manufactured goods? Price was going down. All right, if you're Ivory Coast, and I'm telling you that commodities are booming in price and manufactured goods are falling in price, this is a direct contradiction of Prebisch Singer. It is literally showing that the exact opposite is happening to what Prebisch Singer said. That is a great eval. And you can use the real world knowledge. Again, this is not me just real world from like past papers, June 2012, Unit 4. It shows that the fastest growing economy between the year 2001 and 2010 was, drumroll please, Angola. Angola grew at an average annual rate of 11.1% between the year 2001 and 2010. And Angola's main commodity is oil. That's a great eval, right? That is fully taking Prebisch Singer and being like, mate, ripped you to pieces. That's the evaluation. So if you get a question specifically about primary product dependency, there's your answer. Right, we went on a mad tangent there. Let's go back to what we were actually doing, which was we were dealing with different limitations for growth and development. So I just want to whiz through a couple more. Go back to the list. It was here, I think. Yeah, right. Yeah. You know what? Let's just carry on. I'll just do a new page. Right. So just to remind you guys, I did savings gap, did foreign exchange gap, primary product dependency in depth. Number 4, another limitation to growth and economic development is corruption. So number 4, it might be there's high levels of corruption. This is quite hard to evaluate, by the way, but like I'll tell you an example of an evaluation from the June 2012 paper. But in a nutshell, corruption is where you have officials within government who are acting in their own interests, right? A good definition of corruption is the use of political power for personal gain. Right, really straightforward. Why is that a problem? Well, government tax revenue, state resources that should have been invested into areas like education, healthcare, infrastructure, is instead being diverted into the hands of really corrupt officials. That's bad. But also corruption is likely to deter FDI. TNCs are not going to go to a country where corruption is rife and be like, oh yeah, let's set up business here, man. It's amazing. The evaluation, though, to that, it's the only evaluation that realistically makes sense. But again, there might be data, yeah? The evaluation here is to say that, well, actually, a lot of the natural resources are in developing countries. Like, I think over half of the gold deposits in the world are found in Africa. More than like a third of the minerals in the world are found there. The data, by the way, again, if you read June 2012, Unit 4, it has all that data for you. The issue that you have is this then. You're basically saying, listen, even if there's corruption, FDI might still be pretty high. They might still have to basically go to those countries. Cool? Right, number 5, civil war. I mean, I don't know if I have to explain why, but infrastructure is being destroyed. The workforce is being depleted because they're all dying. Government are using the money on like the war and not like supply side policies, etc., etc., etc. Blah, 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 yeah? Again, there's not real any evaluation to that. The data might give you something, but this is not an amazing analysis because it's not easy to evaluate. Number 6. Number 6 is something called capital flight. Let's talk about capital flight. Right, I'll do one more after this, and we'll move on. Capital flight is just a fancy way of saying that money is not staying in the banks in that country. And there are often 2 reasons why. One, potentially because of the fact that if you're really affluent in that country, you might be worried because you think the banking sector is not sophisticated enough and banks might collapse. You might not be willing to leave money in the bank. But also because of the level of corruption in that economy might deter you from leaving your money in that economy. Same with TNCs, by the way. Companies might set up in these countries, but they might not be willing to leave their money there. Why is that a problem? Well, the problem is that the banks in your economy then have very limited amounts of funds to give out in the form of loans. What does this therefore become? This therefore becomes the savings gap again, which I did earlier. Easy. So if they ask you a question about capital flight, know that that's what it means. Money is not staying in the economy, which leads to the savings gap. Cool. Let's go. I'll do one more. I said I want to do one more. Number 7 is something called human capital inadequacy. What does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, that means that the workforce are very low skilled. It means that education levels in these economies tends to be very, very low. And this is problematic for several reasons. One of the reasons why it's problematic is because of the fact that it's likely to deter TNCs. TNCs are not going to go and set up in a country where, the level of human capital is very low. It's likely to result in most of them relying and working on the farms. Hence, they become even more primary product dependent. It's likely to result in very little innovation. The LRAS curve is likely to not be shifting out very much, etc., etc., etc. Evaluation to that could be that the government might be investing into education and training, so it might rectify this issue in the long run. Something like that. Is that clear? Those are the different points. Now, when it comes to development, the only thing that's annoying about economic development is that they can be a bit evil and specify a very particular thing within economic development, and you need to talk about it. Example, June 2022, they had a whole 8-marker about demographic factors influencing economic development in Kenya. Now, not a big deal, by the way, because the extract was so helpful anyway. So even if you didn't know what that meant, it was literally laid out for you. So normally they would give you guidance, yeah? But just in case, be aware of the fact that they can be a little bit evil, yeah? They've asked about the Lewis model, specifically as a 5-marker before. They've asked about forward markets. I know that's more financial sector, but et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the kind of things that you need to know. So make sure that you know the little nitty-gritty stuff in terms of economic development in case they ask questions in relation to it. Let's do 25-marker on the following. 25-marker says, evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of factors that limit economic development, or of the main constraints to economic development, something to that effect. Yeah. So in other words, what are the effects of these limitations? Now, again, there will be data, so maybe the data will be helpful in terms of you choosing your points, but let's deal with it. If I were doing this particular question, I mean, it's up to you. I don't actually mind which one you do. I would probably personally, my micro side, I'm going to set up my default choice, but my micro side will be dealing with the savings gap. Now, I know the savings gap is a macro concept, no problem. Your overarching point, though, is going to be this, is one microeconomic effect of a lack of savings or of low savings is low profits for firms. Cool. Or is low levels of dynamic efficiency. Something like that as a clear topic sentence. Then we go back. After we basically do that as a topic sentence, we now go, okay, it's completely fine to build the entire analysis through macro, but bring it back to micro afterwards. So let's build it through macro. We talked about how low savings are a byproduct of very low GDP per capita. The average person in this economy tends to earn very little amount of money. Their marginal propensity to consume is therefore super duper high because of the fact that they spend most of their money on basic necessities like food and water. The banks don't have incentive to set up in these countries. All of this translates into firms struggling to borrow money. If you're a firm then in this country and there's very little loans being handed out, you guys agree that your capital machinery is starting to wear out, starting to depreciate. And if that happens, what happens to your costs? Your costs go up. Your variable costs go up. I've drawn this already, by the way. I'm not going to draw it again. Yeah? Variable costs up. How easy is this? And then you could tell me a billion things. You could talk about how higher variable cost translates into higher prices for consumers. I can make an extra point out of it, by the way. I could say, allocative efficiency is going down. Consumer surplus is going down. Their sales are going to go down. Their profits are going down. Some of them might even be loss-making. Those whose profits have gone down have even less money to innovate with and invest, even less dynamic efficiency. And some of those firms might shut down. Wow. Easy analysis, yeah? So evaluate. The evaluation here is to talk about how actually the savings gap may not be as big an issue for 2 reasons. Like I did earlier. 1, aid means that actually people might be able to spend more and maybe potentially could save some of their money because they're getting aid in the form of clothing and water and whatever. But number 2 is technology. Technology makes it far easier for individuals to save their funds. As a result, it might translate into this not being a big issue. It might not be such a bad, the level of savings might be going up. Yeah? That is our analysis. Let's do the macro. Macro, I've already done it. I would, if I were you, I'd do prime product dependency, and you either choose volatility of prices and evaluate it, or you could do Prebisch-Singer and evaluate it. Clear? Easy peasy. There's 25 out of 25. Let's do another question, please. Right, strategies to promote economic development. Okay, again, if you're really lucky, you get this as a question. They were very lucky in the June 2022 paper. They got asked about this as like strategies for remote development for Kenya. Yeah, let's do it. Right, can I just get some of this? In fact, can I make up a question straight away? And then we'll go through the list in a second. The question I want us to do is evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of improvements to the tourism sector or government policies like government improving the tourism sector. That, if this comes up, you don't understand, I need all of you guys to be getting 25 out of 25. That is a dream question. Like, it's so nice that the problem I have is that I don't know where to start. Like, it's like I'm spoiled for choice. Can I actually just do some revision on this and then we'll choose which micro points and which macro points to do? Make sure you, by the way, plan these essays beforehand, yeah? Right, let's talk about tourism. First thing about tourism that's amazing is that tourism is YED elastic. It is seen as like a luxury good. Therefore, when global incomes go up, which they pretty much always do, there is a more than proportionate increase in demand for tourism. So if you have a really strong tourism sector, brilliant for you. Number two, the second benefit of tourism is the fact that it is an amazing source of foreign reserves, right? Can help to fill the foreign exchange gap because all these tourists coming from all parts of the world are coming over and converting their euros, dollars, pounds, whatever currency it is, into your currency. But number three, here's where it gets really easy, is a really strong tourism sector is basically likely to attract FDI, foreign direct investment. And then we are, I can write a whole 25 marker just on FDI, by the way. Like FDI is like dream land. Yeah? Okay. Let's deal with, actually, you know what? Let's quickly whiz through some benefits of FDI. Investment is a component of AD. Yeah, so AD is going to shift outwards. It is also an injection into the circular flow of income. Therefore, there'll be a positive multiplier effect, bonus point, in a developing country. Multiplier is likely to be really big. And the reason why it's likely to be big is because of the fact that they have a very high marginal propensity to consume. That's one. Number two, another thing about FDI is it's in their interest to improve the infrastructure. Okay. I could either build that through LRAS. I could talk about, the productive capacity of the economy increases. Or on a micro level, I could do external economies of scale. Yeah? Okay. Another benefit of FDI is tax revenue for the government. You evaluate that, of course, but the government may generate more tax revenue because income tax could go up. It could be because of the fact that corporation tax goes up because there's more TNCs in the economy. Whatever. All of these, yeah? Another one, that's enough, by the way. That's more than enough. But by the way, TNCs, when they come over and bring their funds into the banks, it can help to rectify the savings gap. But anyways, I'm giving you more than you need, yeah? Let's deal with this. I think the easiest one on a micro level is this. I'm going to say that a higher level of tourism is likely to generate more profits for firms. And the reason why it will generate more profits for firms is because of the fact that tourists coming to your country, let's say you're a restaurant, you're a hotel, is likely to result in demand increasing. Do we agree? AR and MR, therefore, shift outwards. Shift them outwards. Summarize the diagram. And remember, when AR and MR shift outwards, usually on your diagram, your costs will now go down. Bonus analysis. What is the bonus analysis? The bonus analysis is the bigger firms now better placed to tap into economies of scale. Give me an example of economy of scale. They can bulk buy larger quantities of whatever it is that they're doing. Yeah. I don't know. Let's say you're a firm, a restaurant. You could bulk buy more of your ingredients. Great. Then their profits. What happens to their profits? Their profits are going up. What can they do with the profits? They can invest it into like new technology. Give me an example of what they can invest it into. And which efficiency now goes up? Dynamic efficiency goes up. Amazing analysis. Yeah. Let's evaluate. Honestly, again, we are sport for choice in terms of evaluations here. I don't mind, to be honest. Personally, the one that I would do is twofold. One is the fact that tourism tends to be very fashionable. So in other words, as other destinations open up, it might lead to a decline in demand for your particular your country. Example, June 2017, paper Unit 4, old spec, has a question about Bolivia and Bolivia improving their tourism sector. But it mentioned that Peru was like a rival to them, right? Like imagine like suddenly if more people start going to Peru, less people go to Bolivia, right? Imagine, for example, like now that Croatia has joined the Eurozone. I mean, I know this is not Croatia because it's development, but tourists usually go to they might have started to go from Spain to Croatia. It's fashionable, right? And therefore, if suddenly yours goes out of fashion, then demand is going to dramatically decrease. But number two, second thing that I would do in that evaluation is that the tourism sector is so vulnerable to external shocks. And the two external shocks that I need you to remember are terrorist attacks and we lost reception again. It's fine, I'll get it back. Is terrorist attacks, and the second is so topical, which is why I think possibly they could give you an extract on this. COVID. Think about which sector would have been hurt more than any other sector due to COVID. Tourism. Tourism would have been absolutely decimated, right? Imagine all the restrictions that governments placed upon the tour, like travel, would have impacted tourism far more than any other sector in the economy by an absolute country mile, right? And that in itself is therefore a big, big problem. You basically suddenly see a massive decline in your demand. AI and ML might shift inward so much, etc., etc. Cool? Easy peasy. That's more than enough, by the way. But alternatives, you can also talk about the fact that the jobs created are very seasonal. They're only going to hire a few more workers. But this is enough. It's going into like overkill now. Yeah. Okay. Let's do macro. What would I choose for macro if I had a question about tourism? Well, I would easily talk about FDI. 100% I'll talk about FDI. FDI, like just from now until tomorrow, because I talk about how hotel chains like Hilton are going to set up in countries where there is like a really strong tourism sector. This is going to result in more investment. Investment is a component of AD. AD is going to shift out. It's an injection into the circular flow of income, multiplier, massive multiplier effects because of the fact that the NPC is huge. Go crazy. Yeah, just go mad. Yeah, that's your analysis. Evaluation. Now, you have a couple of choices in terms of evaluation, by the way. You could, by the way, at the end of the analysis, when you develop it and draw AD shifting out, talk about how the government are also going to generate more tax revenue, which they could invest into areas like education and healthcare, which can help lift their HDI ranking, lead to economic development. You could evaluate by talking about how TNCs actually may not necessarily pay tax. They can take advantage of tax loopholes, like something called transfer pricing, where they move their profits from your country to another country where corporation taxes are lower, like Ireland, and therefore they pay practically no tax. That's one. Number two is the TNC might repatriate profits. Fancy way of saying they take their profits and send them back to their home country. So they send it back to kind of majority of the shareholders are likely to be, let's say, in America, if it's an American firm. The problem with that is that would worsen your current account because profits leaving go out via investment income on the current account. So the current account would worsen. So AD might even shift inwards, by the way. Yeah? You've got that as a choice of evaluations. The other things that you could talk about, by the way, again, sport for choice here, is infant industries. TNCs might come into your country and absolutely obliterate your little companies. And therefore, that could be like an evaluation as well. By the way, I thought of another analysis, another evaluation for micro, which I really like, which you can also do. Then you can do the fashionable and vulnerable to external shocks as your macro eval. Don't mind. Another really clever evaluation here is you could talk about tourism likely results in higher levels of pollution, negative externalities. Let's draw a negative externality diagram as a revision. Here we go. This is how you draw a negative externality diagram. Right, how long have we been going for? An hour and a half? It's felt like 10 years. That's fine. Right, let's keep going. So costs / benefits. Right, step by step to constructing a negative externality. Let's do it. Those of you that are other examples, by the way, you need to know 4 types of diagrams for externalities. Those of you that are at Excel, you're very lucky, you only need to know 2 diagrams. So if you guys at Excel, it's just negative or positive. Step 1, you ask yourself, negative externality. A negative externality, is that to do with costs or benefits? Think about the word negative. The word negative is obviously bad, so we're dealing with costs. Second question then is, are costs upward sloping or downward sloping? Well, the way to remember it is through your favorite chocolate bar. Whatever your favorite chocolate bar is, so if you're elite, you'll be saying things like Kinder Bueno. Underrated is also Dairy Milk, Whole Nut. Please understand, like, respect that chocolate. It's a very good chocolate. Right, anyways, whatever your chocolate bar is, right? If you're saying crunchy, what's wrong with you? If you're saying Mars, get out of my face. Right, anyways, so basically, so let's say I get a Kinder Bueno. Do you guys agree that I would really enjoy that Kinder Bueno? It's going to be amazing, yeah? I get a second Kinder Bueno straight away. I'll enjoy it, but not quite as much as that first one. Third, fourth, fifth, eventually, I'm going to be sick. The point is as I get more and more chocolate, do I get more and more benefit or do I get less and less benefits? I get less and less benefit. True? Therefore, benefits are always downward sloping. Costs, therefore, must be upward sloping. So if I'm dealing with a negative externality and it's to do with cost, I draw 2 upward sloping curves. For those of you that are at Excel, let's do that first. 1, 2. Now, I'm not going to label them just yet, though. What I now want you guys to do is to go, okay, 1 downward sloping line. There's only going to be 1 downward sloping line. And I can label that downward sloping line like that because it is constant. We're going to assume that they are the same. So we're going to have marginal. Now, every single externality, there are two players: private, the person or firm that's going to cause the externality, and social, everyone else, society. So marginal private benefit equals marginal social benefit. Okay, we're going to assume they're constant. Yeah. And now the next step is this. Can you guys see that there are 2 points of intersection? So here and here. I want you guys to now label, go down from those 2 points. And you now ask yourself a very important but very basic question, which is this: negative externality. A negative externality, is that where we're doing too little of a good thing or too much of a bad thing? Would you guys agree the word negative literally represents that you're doing something bad? So we're saying we're doing too much of a bad thing. Too much of a bad thing. Which one is therefore the equilibrium? Number one, quantity, or number two, quantity? Obviously, the second quantity, QE. And this is QSO. Some of you on the chat are talking about Ferrero Rocher. I respect you. That is a good choice as well. PE, PSO. Yeah? I can now put my pen on the equilibrium, right? Do we all agree? That's the equilibrium. I know that for a fact. I know that's the equilibrium because we're doing too much of this bad thing. Only one of those upward sloping lines is going through that point. Only one of them. This one here. That must be private. Equilibrium always occurs where private cost equals private benefit. Know that for fact. Private cost equals private benefit always and forever. Yeah? That is MPC. This is MSC. Yeah? We now simply put our pen on the equilibrium. Here we go. We draw a line up. Can you guys see the welfare loss triangle? This. Cool. Welfare loss. Ta-da! That, by the way, means that that is negative externality. And by the way, you can make a whole point based off of this because of the fact that now there's going to be so much more pollution when the tourism sector is being developed. Loads of like tourists come over, they litter. It results in like them having to import a lot of things like food and whatever. More planes are going back and forth, more everything, more bad pollution, bad, yeah. And just explain it in terms of, oh, this is going to add more strain onto the NHS or the health service in that country. Workers are going to get sick more often. Don't go crazy, but there you go. Is that clear? That is 25 marker on tourism. Lucky you. Quickly, I want to talk about one more thing. We'll do the list of things and I'll whiz through some of the theory for strategies to promote development. Now, look, it can be asked again, yeah? But last year, the 15 marker in paper 2 was about strategies to promote development. That does not mean they can't ask strategies again, but I think if development does come up, my guess, and I can't emphasize enough, it is a guess, it is not a prediction, I don't know, right? Is that it would be limitations to growth and development this time. That's more probable than strategies, but I might be so wrong. You guys might come back to this video later and be like, you're a moron, you got it all wrong. It is not a prediction. I'm trying to prepare you guys for every eventuality that could possibly be asked, right? Okay, right. Someone asked a question about, someone emailed me, actually quite a few of you emailed me about buffer stock schemes. Let's deal with buffer stock schemes, both in terms of the theory, the diagram, and I'll show you a past paper question in a second. Right, so let's go. This is the theory. The starting point is to remind ourselves about primary products. Primary products, actually, so that's not quantity, that's going to be time. Primary products like cocoa and other agricultural products are very, very, very volatile in price. So it does like that, yeah? Now, the problem with that is that if you're relying on that commodity, when the price of the commodity collapses down here, that's going to result in significant unemployment. Government tax revenue is like on the floor. It's horrendous, yeah? So buffer stock schemes, by the way, is Edexcel, yeah? So it's really, really bad for your country. You don't want the price to go down there. Scenario number 2, the prices are all the way there. Now, bear in mind, though, that primary products include food. What happens to low-income households in your economy, then, if the price of the food goes up to that? Do you guys agree that that's going to cause them to starve? They're not going to be able to basically pay for their food. That is obviously really, really bad. What the government want to do then is they want to try to manipulate the market to ensure that we don't have these wild fluctuations in the price. So they're going to set a maximum price here. Max price. Let's call that P max. And they're going to set a minimum price over, let's say, over here. Right, can I just clarify something about the maximum and minimum prices here compared to a maximum and minimum price scheme in theme 1? This is not like theme 1. In theme 1, when I said a minimum price scheme, it was a legal minimum. In other words, it was illegal for anyone to sell below that minimum. This is not that. What this is imagine that you and I are running this like scheme, yeah? We're the government agency that's responsible for trying to keep the prices within this range. The price of whatever this commodity is could fall below minimum. It can go down minimum. But then like an alarm will go off and it will tell us, oh, we need to do something to try and manipulate the market and cause the price to go back up. The price could go above the maximum. It's not a legal maximum. But again, the alarm bell will go off and tell us, oh, we need to do something to try and manipulate the market and bring the price back down again. Let's talk through the logic, and then I'll show you the diagram. Logic. Scenario number one. Let's say the price of the commodity is over here, P1. Do you guys see that at P1, the price is really, really low? It's below the minimum, yeah? Okay, so let's see. If I draw a very basic supply and demand diagram. P1. P1. Okay, let's assume that this P1 is the same as this P1 over here. So this price is below the range. It's outside of what we call the tolerance range, okay? Now, you as the government agency need to do one of two things. Either you're buying the commodity or you're selling the commodity. It's as simple as that, yeah? But let me just clarify what has happened here for you to understand. If this is, let's say, cocoa, and I told you that in a given harvest, the price is really low, does that indicate that this was a good harvest or a bad harvest? Think carefully about your answer, by the way. Is there a lot of cocoa in the market if the price is really low, or is there a scarcity? Do you guys agree that if there's loads of cocoa, in other words, there's a really good harvest, the price of each cocoa is really, really low because there's an abundance of it. I can get it from anywhere, yeah? In other words, this is a good harvest. So P1 over here, let's assume hypothetically that, I don't know, 100 million units of cocoa are circulating in the market because it's a good harvest, okay? I, as the government agency, now do this. I now go and become a consumer. I go and buy loads of cocoa. Because if I buy loads of cocoa, let's assume that I buy, of the 100 million, I buy 60 million. Or let's say I buy 40 million, which leaves the market with how much? 60 million. Do you guys agree that cocoa now becomes more scarce? There's less of it in the market. And if it's more scarce, what does that do to the price? It causes the price to go up. On a supply and demand diagram, by the way, what happened? I acted as a consumer because I bought loads of cocoa. That causes which curve to shift, supply or demand? Well, demand, because I'm the consumer. Demand shifts outwards, D2, and hence the price goes back up. I keep buying and buying and buying until I raise it to that price, P min. Yeah? That's the first thing the government agency can do, is they're basically going to buy until we go up to P min. Scenario number two, let's say the price is up here, P2. Let's draw supply and demand again. That's 2, D2, so that's P2, and that's P2. Okay, right. Firstly, let's work it out. If the price is up there, really, really high, is that a good harvest or a bad harvest? Well, it's a bad harvest because it means the good is scarce. There's not very much cocoa in the market. Okay, let's assume that in that given harvest, there's only 10 million of cocoa produced, like it was a really bad harvest. What can the government agency do? Remember they bought 40 million in the earlier harvest? They've stockpiled that 40 million. They now flood the market. They now sell cocoa in the market, and suddenly it goes from let's say 10 million to 60 million because they sell their 50 million. Oh, sorry, 50, that's terrible maths. 50 million because they sell the 40 million that they bought up before. Is cocoa as scarce as it was now? No, it's not as scarce. Supply, therefore, in that instance, by the way, shifts outwards to S3 there. And you keep buying until bring the price back down to P max. Does that make sense? That is the logic of a buffer stock scheme. And the logic, by the way, is that you want to manipulate the market to try and keep price fluctuations like here in that range. Yeah, you don't want it to go above that range because now, if it's in that range, no one is starving, and also producers can now plan ahead with a lot more conviction and confidence. Investment hopefully goes up and all of that. This could therefore, by the way, be an evaluation as well for primary product dependency. You could do this. I wouldn't, it's a bit long. But right, diagram. Can I show you the diagram? It's a bit long, but let me just explain it step by step. I'm deliberating between water and Red Bull. Who am I kidding? Red Bull. Right. This is how you draw the diagram. Price, quantity. Right, you start off with a very basic supply and demand. So we go S, and we go D. Now, I don't need you for this particular diagram to label the equilibrium. And the reason why is because the equilibrium really isn't really the equilibrium. It's going to be the midpoint between the maximum and the minimum. It's like the minimum. It's like the middle point. It's like you can argue the target price, like the ideal price. Forget that, though. I don't want that. What I want to do is I'm going to set a maximum price and I'm going to set a minimum price. Again, to clarify, this does not mean that the maximum is a legal maximum. It does not mean the legal minimum. It is the range, basically, that they're going to have. So we're going to have over here maximum. Here's max price. Otherwise, by the way, known as a price ceiling, same thing. So that's P max. And over here, we're going to have a minimum min price. And that's P min. Okay? Let's chat. Now, up to now, hopefully this diagram is pretty straightforward. But what we now need to do is basically you want to depict two scenarios where the government or government agency need to act to case basically they have to do something. So we're going to draw two perfectly inelastic supply curves. Right? Can I clarify why they're going to be perfectly inelastic? We're going to say, imagine that this was the supply in a given year. And we're going to make it so that it intersects demand one time above maximum, so they need to do something, and the other time below minimum, so again, they need to do something. So can you guys see, this is the demand curve over here. Here's my demand curve, yeah? I need to draw a perfectly inelastic supply curve to the left of this point here. Because if I put it through there, no need for them to intervene because it's at maximum, fine. I'm going to pick a point like here, like this. Right. Yeah. So this is going to be Q1. This is S1. Now, do you guys see that supply hits demand? This perfectly inelastic supply curve hits demand there. P1. Is that price too high or too low? Can you all see that this is basically too high a price? Yeah? Is that a good harvest or a bad harvest? Well, do you agree that that means the good is scarce? This is a bad harvest. So let's depict that with this. Bad harvest. Okay. What does the government agency need to do to bring the price back down? Would you agree that if there's a scarcity in the market, there's not much of this particular commodity, they need to sell this commodity. They need to sell the commodity to bring the price back down, make it less scarce. The exact amount they need to sell it by, I want you guys to put your pen always on where the demand curve hits the maximum, because that's what I need to bring it down to. Dot down from that point. I'm going to label that Q3. I know, I promise I can count. I purposely missed out Q2. You're going to see why in a second. That distance there is how much they sell. Cool. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two. Scenario number two is now I need to draw a perfectly inelastic supply curve that intersects demand below the minimum. I need to again show a scenario where they need to basically act. They need to do something. Can you see that that's where it hits the minimum? So a little bit to the right of that. So like here we'll do that. Okay, so this is S2, Q2. First things first, supply equals demand over here. P2. Too high or too low? Well, clearly this is too low. Okay, is that a good harvest or a bad harvest? It's a bad harvest. Oh, sorry, it's a good harvest. What am I talking about? My brain's not working. This is a good harvest. There's too much of it. What does the government agency therefore need to do? The government agency will need to buy up stock to make the good more scarce. How much do they buy? Go to where demand intersects the minimum. Because remember, you're now trying to, as long as it's in the range, even if it's just about on the range, all good. So now demand intersects the minimum here. That's Q4. And this is how much they buy. Clear? That is as simple as that. There you go, right? They sell Q1, Q3 units. They buy Q2, Q4 units. And now once you've described that diagram, by the way, you're basically explaining how they do it. And the purpose behind it is that it gives a lot more conviction to firms. So investment hopefully starts to go up. Yeah? Right, very quickly, I'm going to show you guys a multiple choice question from the old spec, because this used to be in the old spec, by the way, in theme 1. They moved it into theme 4. But anyways, in a nutshell, what are the evaluations for this? What are the issues with buffer stock scheme? There are 3. Number 1, first evaluation for a buffer stock scheme is, okay, why can't I run a buffer stock scheme? The reason why I can't run a buffer stock scheme is not because I'm not the government. That is the common answer I get. The reason why I can't run a buffer stock scheme is because I don't have the money to be able to manipulate demand. Right? Think about, like, if I go to a corner shop and I buy a Kinder Bueno, or if I buy like a Ferrero Rocher, right? Is that going to shift the demand curve for Ferrero Rocher out? Obviously not, right? Obviously not. In order for you to therefore manipulate the market price, you're not buying small quantities here. You're buying astronomical quantities, like seriously high quantities. So therefore, what do you need a lot of? You need loads of money. 1. Okay, let's say I was a multi-billionaire and I had nothing better to do with my life. I decided I'm going to manipulate the price of cocoa because it's just jokes. If I bought 1 billion units of cocoa, what do I need to do to it if I want to manipulate the price in the future? Do you guys agree that I need to store it? So I now incur storage costs. Right, that's another cost. So there's a massive, massive cost involved in running a buffer stock scheme. So that's the first evaluation. Second evaluation. is the fact that we are assuming that the good is non-perishable. It has to be non-perishable. Perishable basically means that it expires. If this thing expires, let's say I did this to like fresh tomatoes, would it make sense? No. Because if I buy fresh tomatoes today and then in a year's time, when there's suddenly like a bad harvest and I need to sell the fresh tomatoes, they ain't no fresh, they're not fresh anymore. I can't sell them anymore. Therefore, I can't manipulate the market. That's two. And number three, the last thing that you could talk about is we're assuming that it goes good harvest, buy stock, bad harvest, sell stock. It doesn't work like that. What if you have successive bad harvests? So if you have a bad harvest, okay, I sell from my stockpile. The next harvest is a bad harvest. Sell from my stockpile. The next harvest is a bad harvest again. Do you guys see what's happening? I might run out of stock to sell, and therefore I completely lose control and I cannot manipulate the market anymore. That is the issue. If you have successive bad harvests, this scheme is likely to fail, and most buffer stock schemes that have been run in the past have failed, by the way. June 2017, Unit 1, old spec. There's a question about a buffer stock scheme, by the way, in the data response if you really want to do one, but there's no real need. Right, let's do one question, and then I'm going to move on from buffer stock scheme and do something else. Right, yeah, I am so tired, but it's okay. Let's do old spec, Unit 1. So old spec is here. You guys can see my screen. June 2016, question number 7. Let's do it. Oh, no, number 8. I lied. Sorry, how dare I? So number 7. Poor by me. Right, here is the question. It shows, the diagram shows a buffer stock scheme in the wheat market where a government agency intervenes to ensure the price remains between P1 and P2. The 2016 harvest, S2, leads to, actually, have a go by yourselves. Give you guys 10 seconds while I just breathe and just get my voice back. Have a go, and then I'll go through the answer in a second. By the way, those of you that have joined late on TikTok, I would highly advise that you guys go onto YouTube where you can see my screen, because I can't show my screen on TikTok, unfortunately. Right, let's do it. Are you ready? Let's talk. So we're dealing with S2, which is 2016. So the first thing I need to work out is this a good harvest, bad harvest? Is the price too high, too low? Well, can you see that supply intersects demand there where my mouse is, yeah? The price is too high. It's above the maximum. In other words, is it a good harvest or a bad harvest? Or is it a bad harvest? What should I therefore do? Do I buy or do I sell to bring the price back down? I sell. I sell, by the way, the exact amount is W to X, that quantity there, but it doesn't ask us that. What is the answer? The answer is B. The government agency selling wheat from its stockpile. Bonus question. What should they do in 2015? It's a trick question. The reason why it's a trick question is nothing. Because in 2015, can you see the price is in that range? All good. There is no need for the agency to intervene because it's already within the range. All good. Right, I think we've exhausted buffer stock scheme to its limit. Let's move back to some theory. Right. I want you guys to know the difference between different types of different types of interventionist and market-based strategies to promote development. So development, if I got development as a 25 marker or a 12 marker or whatever, yeah. First things first, they can ask you, like last year, to specifically talk about either market-based or interventionist development strategies. Let me go through what the difference is. So let's start with interventionist. An interventionist strategy, from the name, is where the government intervene and they're going to actively play a role in trying to promote development, basically. Yeah? They're going to do something to try and promote development, and they're intervening. If you get this as a 25 marker, trust me, your go-to should be, number 1, education and training. Invest into education and training, and you could do this micro or macro. So easy. And the reason why, if I do it on a micro level, is you say, okay, education and training is the point. If I invest into education and training, what is happening to my workforce? Are they more efficient or less efficient? Do you guys agree they're more efficient? The cost per unit of labor goes down. Do you guys agree the productivity level goes up? The level of human capital goes up. What does that do on a cost and revenue diagram? Well, do you agree that my variable costs are going down because each unit of labor is now more productive? So MC and AC dropping, and summarize the diagram. And we've done that a million times today already. Yeah, you can easily develop that. That's that. The evaluation of that, by the way, massive time lag. It's going to take ages to have an impact on the economy. Number two, second interventionist strategy, protectionism. Okay, I will deal with protectionism in a bit. It's one of the topics I want to go through. But anyways, protectionism in a nutshell. So that's interventionist because you're basically, let's say you subsidize your firms. Let's say you oppose a protectionist policy like a tariff, right? If you place a quota, all of this is allowing your firms to grow from within. Okay. Number three, you will not need three. You will only need two, but like just for you to have as a backup. Number three, in terms of interventionist, is the one we just did right now. Oh, what happened? I don't know how that happened. Go back to that page. Honestly, technology is not my phone today. All right. So number three, buffer stock scheme. I wouldn't do that, to be honest with you, but know that that's another one that you could do. Okay, that's plenty. There's enough there. Yeah, those are the two, by the way. Is honestly like just so much better than the rest. Then we have market based. Oh, by the way, there's another name that they could use, just in case they use the other name. If they want to be really evil. Interventionist strategies are also known as inward-looking strategies. Market-based strategies, outward-looking strategies. Right, number one in my market-based strategies, without a shadow of a doubt for me, is a reduction in corporation tax. And I would link it to promoting FDI, because then you are like spoiled for choice here. You go crazy. TNCs are going to come in, investment, injection, multiplier, like just go wild, yeah? Number two, second thing that I want you to talk about, trade liberalization. Trade liberalization is where you remove barriers to trade. So that might be that you engage in like, trade agreements with your neighbors, trade creation. It's going to result in you being able to tap into your comparative advantage. It's going to result in export-led growth. It's going to result in better standard of goods and services for consumers, more choice, lower prices. Go crazy, yeah? Those are my two. If it's market-based, if I were you guys, yeah? Last year, by the way, they also alluded to like privatization. I don't mind. You could do that as well. Pretty easy on a micro level. Although that question in the 15 marker, sorry, no, yeah, sorry, it was 15 marker, it was paper two. It was paper two, so you couldn't do micro. Whereas I guess you guys can do micro for privatization as well. Okay. Right. There's a third category, by the way, but I don't envisage they would write the question in this way. They could, they never have, which is other. Other strategies are like the best ones, to be honest with you. They're the ones that I probably would choose most of it for if I had a question. One is the Lewis model. I realized, by the way, I was going to explain the Lewis model, but literally today we posted a YouTube and TikTok and Instagram video of me going through the Lewis model. So let's watch that. Like, that saves us time. Yeah, so that's one. And number two, develop tourism. Yeah, big time tourism. I did that earlier in the stream. Yeah, cool. Let's go. What do I want to do? Protectionism. If I get a question, 25 marker on the effects of protectionism or the impact of, let's say, protectionist policies, this is what I want you to do. Now, if it's open-ended, to be fair, I don't know because obviously it's data specific. But if it was open-ended, can I tell you guys what my macro point is? The macro is pretty straightforward because obviously this is a macro topic, so you could do anything protectionism related. My micro point, I would now talk about, bear in mind, there are three types of protectionist policies. What are they? Number one, let's write them actually. Protectionism. Oh, yeah, let's get some water into my system for collapse. Right, so number one is a tariff. What is a tariff? Well, a tariff is a tax on imports. Number two, quota. What is a quota? A quota is an upper limit on the number of units that you allow into your country of a particular good. And number three, domestic subsidies. Right, why did I go and do that little bit of revision? The reason why I did that little bit of revision for you guys is because do you agree that if I look at those three, one of them really stands out as micro? Hello, subsidies. Obviously subsidies, yeah? I would do subsidies. Now you can do tariff. I don't mind. That is also value. You could do any of them, by the way. You could make micro out of value, all of those. I would do subsidies. And the reason why I would do subsidies is because I can draw a diagram. And remember, I talked about when you draw a diagram, you're in happy land when it comes to macro. So it's the 25 marker. But you guys that are, you're officially my students now. The ones that have been to these streams, have come to my courses, of one-to-ones, whatever. The basic diagram that people will draw across the country is supply and demand. Do we look like we're basic? Do we look like we're theme one, theme two level? Please. We are not going to draw supply and demand. We are going to draw cost and revenue, always. Cost and revenue from a subsidy perspective. Think about how that affects cost and revenue. What is a subsidy? A subsidy is a grant given by the government to producers, which decreases their cost of production, hint, resulting in lower prices and higher output. Do you guys agree that if you subsidize firms, their variable costs go down? Do you guys agree that MC and AC go down? Do you guys agree that we've drawn that diagram about 5 billion times in the stream today? You shift MC and AC down. You now talk about how, and you summarize the diagram. Prices being charged to consumers go down. Allocated efficiency goes up. Their sales go up. Their profits go up. What can they do with the profits? They can invest, go wild, go crazy. It gives them a competitive advantage, by the way, against other companies around the world because of the fact that the government are protecting them through the subsidies. Yes. Evaluation, you have one of two evaluations that you could do here. One is dependency culture and how they might become inefficient. They become overly reliant on the subsidy. That's a problem. But there's another alternative evaluation. The alternative evaluation is, and by the way, the lock specimen paper 2, has a 15 marker about a trade war between the EU and China. The context was this, by the way. It was the Chinese were being accused of subsidizing the telecommunications sector, that's like mobile phones and whatnot, which was giving an unfair advantage to their firms over European firms. So what did the EU do in retaliation? They basically put up a barrier to trade tariff. They put a massive tariff up. What is that? If I have countries retaliating to my protectionism, that is a trade war. And a trade war may mean that actually your firm may see a decrease in demand. If your firm is selling a lot to another country and they now put up a tariff or they place a quota upon your firms, upon your country, what shifts now? AR and MR shift inwards, and you can draw it, by the way, if you've got the time. And their profits may not be going up, their profits might be going down, and that is a sensational evaluation. That's macro. Stay with macro. Macro, got a choice, to be honest with you. I mean, if it's a developing country, I'd probably be doing the infinite industry argument. Can I just go through what that is? If it was a developed economy, it would be the sunset industry argument. There is a YouTube video, by the way, that I have, which goes through all of this, but let me just kind of recap with you guys very quickly. Right, sunset industry argument, in a nutshell. Sorry, not sunset, infinite industry argument. The infinite industry argument works like this. It argues that in many developing countries, many of the domestic firms in particular industries are currently too small to be able to fully tap into their economies of scale. All right, if I draw that out, imagine that you are a car manufacturing firm that's just set up in, I don't know, Ghana. The amount of output you produce is somewhere over here, Q1. Your cost is there. It's really, really high. Yeah. The issue that you have now is that if there were free trade, there was no protectionism. What will now happen is that big tech companies, big car manufacturing firms like Nissan are going to come into your economy. They are going to tap into the economies of scale because they're huge. They're going to buy a massive quantity. Their cost is therefore significantly lower than yours, right? Do you agree that you can't compete with them on a cost basis? They are therefore going to just wipe the floor. You cannot compete with them on a cost basis. They're going to have a lower price than you. You can't survive. Therefore, the argument is this. The argument is the government should therefore basically protect these industries, protect these firms, provide a quota, for example, impose a tariff, subsidize these domestic firms, whatever you want to do, right? All of that will translate into these firms hopefully being able to compete. They now get more time to grow organically, tap into economies of scale. Once they're at a point where they can fend for themselves, the government can now remove the protectionist barriers and not need to worry about these industries collapsing. That's the infinite industry argument. Yeah? The sunset industry argument is very similar. The idea basically here is that in some countries, some sectors are very outdated, like the copper mining industry, not copper mining, sorry, the steel industry in the USA is very outdated. But the problem is it's also a major source of employment. If you therefore have massive amounts of competition, those industries would collapse. The government should therefore protect these industries, give them the time required to basically develop their, technology, become more relevant, blah, blah, blah. And then that is the analysis, yeah? Okay, the evaluation, really straightforward. You are going to draw the best diagram in the whole of theme 2. Theme 4. The whole course, to be honest, is the protectionism tariff diagram. Right. Let's do the tariff diagram again. I know I've done this with you guys in another stream, but just as revision, ahead of next Friday, let's go through it. So, supply and demand, right? S, D. Okay, now, you will know, by the way, which country is imposing the tariff, okay? Because of the fact that it will be very obvious from the data. So let's say it was, Ghana, then you'd basically do S Ghana over here. or D, Ghana over there, yeah? Anyways, let's say the context, I don't know, I'm completely making it up, is the EU engaging in a trade war with China, yeah? So what you're going to do is rather than writing S, you're going to become Cristiano Ronaldo, you go, right, I'm joking. So S, EU, and demand EU. Lovely. Yeah, hopefully you laughed at my joke. Thanks very much. Anyways, this is what we're going to do. We're going to now basically talk about, there's a world price and everyone in the world market becomes a price taker. Imagine you could literally get this product from anywhere across the world, yeah? So let's do the world price, like world supply over here. So this is WP1. This is world supply. Okay. This is Q1. This is Q2. Now, I have a whole video on this. Please watch it, which explains why this is the level of imports. If you're not sure, please watch the video. It will really clarify. But that is M1. Okay. Now, the other alternative, and now what happens is the tariff is now imposed. Tax is going to go up. Yeah, there's a tax. And so the world price is now going to go up because of the tariff. So this is WS plus tariff, WP2. The new level of imports are now over here. Oh, no, sorry, that's Q3. My brain is not working. And this is the new level of imports, yeah? Then we're going to have, this is A, this is B, this is C, and this is D. Again, the video honestly goes through everything for you guys on YouTube. If you go through it, it will detail why this diagram looks the way it does. Okay, in a nutshell, the great thing about this particular diagram is that you could use it as both analysis and evaluation. If I were doing infinite industry argument, or I was doing the sunset industry argument and talk about how it's going to protect jobs, how it's really good for domestic firms, I will be speaking about how producer surplus goes up by area A. Okay, so producers benefit by plus A. But now the evaluation is that consumers get demolished here. Consumers, A, B, C, and D, it all goes down. So as a result, consumers get less choice. They get higher prices. They get lower quality. It's all like a catastrophe for consumers, yeah? That is my evaluation. My evaluation is all about how it's not good in totality, basically, yeah? Clear? That's protectionism. Right. Then I do another 25 marker, and then I'll revise one more topic with you guys, and I think we might call it a day because I am shattered. Right. The 25 marker that I'd like to do with you guys, please. Actually, can I do a 12 marker really quickly? 12 marker says the following. Assess the likely impact of a heavy fine for firms such as Apple. I'm totally making up context, yeah? So Apple very recently got a big fine from the European Union, or like the European Commission, the regulator. I think it was basically for, what's it called? For like the slowing down of mobile phones, or whatever the context is, who cares, right? Let's say, what is the impact of them getting a heavy fine? You can now do one of two things. Well, you know what? Can I give you guys 10 seconds to just think about it, or 15 seconds to think about it before I give you the answer? You guys need to also breathe. The question basically is, okay, what is the impact of like heavy fines? Either 12 marker. Right. Give yourself a massive pat on the back if you have said the following. If Apple get a heavy fine, do you guys agree that their brand loyalty is starting to waver? What has the market become? The market has become more contestable. And do you know what this question now becomes? It becomes the very first question I began the stream. We're circling back to that. The context is slightly different. That one, they were limit pricing because of the fact that there was an advertising ban, because the market became more contestable. Here, you could talk about the advertising, sorry, the fine ruins their reputation. And as a consequence of their reputation basically being diminished, the market becomes more contestable. It alters their behavior. And as a result, they might adopt limit pricing. Could be that. You could also talk about how, if I drew a cost and revenue diagram, this is what's going to happen. So let's draw it out. This is from the perspective of Apple, by the way. So MC AR equals D. MR profit maximizations here. Yeah. Q1 there. AC, so it's really, really rough. You get the gist. C1, A, and B. Right, I'm intrigued. If there's a fine, what would shift? What does a fine shift for Apple? A fine is a one-off cost. It is therefore a fixed cost. Yeah. So what would happen is only AC would go up. So average cost now goes, let's say over here, AC2. Bear in mind, by the way, that because neither MC nor MR have shifted, the output stays the same. The price also stays the same because I derive my price from where Q1 hits AR. And then I go up until I hit the average cost curve. Oh, sorry, that's C2 over here. And that's in my instance over here, they're now making a loss. Right? They're not going to be making a loss because, yeah, it's Apple. Nonetheless, the point is their profits are likely to go down. If their profits are going down, whatever that firm is, they can't invest into two things. They can't advertise, or they don't have as much of a budget for advertising. But the second thing as well, by the way, is that they can't invest into new technology. All of this, by the way, means the market becomes more contestable. And the question is the same as I answered earlier today. Cool? We can analyze it that way. We can evaluate, by the way, by talking about how does it really become more contestable? Like it's Apple. Their brand loyalty is so strong. People tend to exhibit enormous amounts of habitual behavior, inertia. So like any of us who I suspect most people watching this or most people like, either have an Apple product like an iPhone or maybe a Mac. When they admitted to slowing down your phone, did you abandon your phone and go buy a Samsung or buy an Android? You're lying if you're saying yes. Like, no, you didn't. You're still on your Apple phone. You were like offended, but you still continue to buy Apple products. Make sense? In other words, habitual behavior, inertia, demand is super inelastic. It's not responsive. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? Those are the kind of things that you can basically do as evaluations to explain that actually the market may not be that much more contestable. Right. One of the last things I want to do with you guys is the following 25 marker that has yet to be asked before. Evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of increased specialization. 25 marks. What do we do? Right. Can I, again, stop and breathe a little bit, give you guys some time to try write something, have a think. Let's go. So it's really important for you guys to be able to spot where certain theories come up in micro and where they come up in macro. If I were doing this in terms of macro, because I think that's the slightly harder point. The macro is to talk about comparative advantage. A reminder, comparative advantage is where a country has a lower opportunity cost in the production of a good or service relative to another country, and therefore they ought to specialize. If they specialize in that particular thing, whatever that thing might be, yeah, then that will result in export-led growth. Exports are a component of AD. AD therefore shifts out. Exports are also an injection into the circular flow of income, and so there's going to be a positive multiplier effect. Economic growth is likely to go up. Unemployment is likely to go down. You've got a million things that you can talk about. That's your analysis. Evaluation depends on the country, by the way. So there's two things that I could do for evaluation here. One of the things I could evaluate is if it's a developing country, what if their comparative advantage, which is likely the case, is a primary product? Who says it's a bad idea for you to specialize in your primary product? Well, our good friend, Herbish Singer. So I could evaluate with that, right? That could be a potential evaluation. The other thing as well is that even though they have now, let's say, specialized in their comparative advantage, if they're facing unfair trade conditions, if they have loads of like quotas and tariffs, they have to against they're not part of a trading bloc, or their trading bloc only has a small number of countries and they're going to struggle to sell their good globally. Exports aren't going to go up that much. Economic growth isn't really going to go up. That could also be an evaluation. Micro specialization. What happens if firms specialize? Well, in particular, there's a type of specialization that I talk about. This particular type of specialization that I want you to know is the division of labor. The division of labor is basically the idea that each worker now specializes in a particular role. So let's say it's a car manufacturing firm. You get someone to specialize in making, I don't know, the engine. Someone makes the seats. Someone makes the wipers. Well, I don't know, blah, 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 right? What happens though? When that happens, it translates into each unit of labor becoming more specialized, more skilled. The unit labor cost, I know it's a macro term, chuck it into micro, all good. The unit labor cost goes down, therefore productivity levels go up, efficiency goes up. What are you shifting? You are shifting MC and AC down. And now we're in happy land again because we're drawing the cost and revenue diagram. Amazing for us. Profits therefore go up and go wild. Yeah. Evaluation. Now, there's, I think, 2 or 3 really good evaluations that you could use here. One of the evaluations is based off a past paper. So they had a question about an issue with specialization, and it was in relation to like I think it was like a sandwich maker. Think about, so I suspect all of you guys know who Subway are. I know obviously Subway are not packed and full all the time, but let's go through with the example of Subway. Okay. Imagine that you work at Subway. Little bit of real world trivia for you guys. My cousin used to work at Subway many years ago, and when he was a student, do you know what the official job title is for people who work at Subway? Because it is the best job title I think I've ever heard in my life. They are officially called sandwich artists. Amazing. Anyway, so let's say you're a sandwich artist. What a legend you are, right? And this is your life. People come into the shop and you go, what bread would you like? Foot long or 6-inch? What bread would you like? Foot long or 6-inch? You're lame. Your existence is lame. Your life, I'm really sorry if you work at Subway, but like how boring is that? And the issue that you have is that if you have specialized workers, division of labor, they are likely to quit regularly. You're going to have to keep replacing them with new staff. And so your cost actually might be quite high because you keep having to replace them because they get so bored. It's like the same task over and over again. Big problem, right? That's the first eval. Second evaluation that you could talk about is the fact that the production process can become too interdependent. The production process is so interdependent. So let's say in the example of a car manufacturing firm, if one department fails to meet targets, or let's say hypothetically, if that, I don't know, that department goes on strike, the entire process stalls. Pun intended, by the way, car manufacturing, right? That's a problem, right? That is literally a big, big issue. So you become way, way too interdependent upon one another. That's enough, by the way. But the third, just for jokes, why not? The third one you could talk about is the fact that the skills of those individuals are very limited or they're very specific. If that sector becomes outdated, macro, they suffer from structural unemployment. Micro, they become occupationally immobile. Boom. How many, like, we sport for choice here. And there's your 25 mark. Okay? Last thing. I said last thing a million times, but this is the last thing. Let us revise, please. Inequality. Inequality hasn't come up. It's not the nicest topic in the world, but usually the data is relatively helpful. By the way, can I just give you a word of caution? June 2019, paper 3. It was very badly written, and like we got a lot of complaints that year. It was not a particularly great year. But one of the issues that people had is the extract. So the questions, a lot of them were like, they were like, apart from this thing, tell us like a cause of inequality, or apart from this, why are these companies unable to grow? And then the extract was literally about that thing that you're not allowed to talk about. And people really struggled, by the way, in that to derive like application marks. Application marks are earned not just from quoting data, how you do that. It is also earned from real world knowledge, and that doesn't have to be facts and stats. You can just give me an example of something. Oh, let's say like if it was about, oh, apart from access to finance, like June 2019, by the way, paper 3, limitations to economic development, basically. Why? Like it was about companies not growing in Mozambique. Yeah. Okay. I could just go, the infrastructure in Mozambique is likely to be very, very, very bad. And that would limit their ability to grow because they can't transport and produce as much output and grow as a firm, blah, 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 blah. That's application though. And also application, by the way, is diagrams as well. So just in the event they ask you guys awkward questions where it says, apart from this thing, and then the data is all about that thing, don't freak out. It's all good. Your theory holds. Your theory will always be theory. It will always be valid. Yeah. Know that your theory is solid and know that it will work. Anyways, right. So there's that. What was I going to say? My brain is gone. What was I thinking about? Oh, wow. I'll show you how tired I am. Oh. We were dealing with inequality, yeah? Okay, so let's list a couple of factors and causes of inequality. I want like 3 or 4. Number 1, by miles, is access to education. Okay. In the June 2022 paper 2, good extract to read, by the way, is a bit of a revision. It has a whole extract about regional inequality within the UK. And it spoke about how academic attainment typically was a lot higher in London compared to areas like Rotherham. I was talking about it the other day about it. Imagine if you were in Rotherham reading that extract in the exam and they're basically saying you're dumb. Like that's just, honestly, like at that point, I just walk out of the exam. But anyways, for those of you at Rotherham, prove them wrong. Let's get A stars. Anyways, so the point is access to education is a massive contributor to inequality because if you get educated and you have access to good education, that will translate into you being able to go to a better university. I saw someone choosing Warwick over LSE. What are you doing with life? Anyways, I'm joking. Warwick's a great university as well. But anyways, So access to education basically translates into you basically getting hopefully into a better university, better qualifications, better skills, better job, more income, reduces income inequality. Yeah, that is number one. Number two, corruption. In developing countries, corruption tends to be rife. Why does that contribute to inequality? Well, obviously, because all of the money is being hoarded by the really corrupt officials and it's not being distributed equally, right? That's a problem. Number three, infrastructure. Right, a couple of issues with bad infrastructure. Number one, if the infrastructure in your economy is bad, is it likely to incentivize or deter FDI? Do we agree that it's likely to deter FDI? Why would TNCs want to come to a country where infrastructure is bad? But also, it could be that it's regional inequality. London is disproportionately better than the rest of the country when it comes to infrastructure. Really unfair, but it is. So therefore, TNCs typically locate in London, not in other parts of the UK. Make sense? So that could be another contributing factor. It also, by the way, makes labor geographically immobile. So therefore, if infrastructure is bad, people who are in areas where there's very few job opportunities are almost trapped in those areas because they don't have the infrastructure to be able to relocate. Number four is throwback to paper 2, 5 marker for you guys, progressive, regressive taxation. So tax system. If you have regressive taxes, if there are loads of like indirect taxes, that is regressive. What does that mean? Regressive means that it's a tax that impacts low-income households more than high-income households. A tax on cigarettes is going to disproportionately impact low-income more than high-income. Therefore, that would widen income inequality. Yeah? Progressive tax, on the other hand, would reduce income inequality. Right. Let's wrap up by talking about a few things, exam technique. Number one, misconceptions. Let's get them out of the way. The 5, 8, and 12. The 5, 8, and 12, you do not need to mix micro and macro. In fact, why the hell would you? Like, it doesn't make sense. If you get a 5 marker on a micro topic, answer it through micro. If you get a 12 marker on macro, yeah? If it makes sense to mix them, you can. You'll get credited for doing so. I don't mind, right? But be aware of the fact that there is no expectation whatsoever that you need to mix them other than in the 25 marker where you have a very clear paragraph on micro and evaluate and a very clear macro paragraph and evaluate. Cool? Let's make sure that that's really clear to you guys. Secondly, timing is your biggest enemy in this exam. Now, one of the things I actually found out recently, and credit, to be honest, to Edexcel for this, is a lot of the feedback from schools and exam centers over the last couple of years is kids have been running out of time because they overload you with data. Now, I know paper 2 had like 4 or 5 figures, but actually the extracts were fairly short in both of your papers. Hopefully that means they're listening and they don't overload you. But bear in mind, paper 3 is the one in particular where they tend to give you like a lot of data. And partly because of the fact that the 25 marker is data driven. Yeah. So please be very conscious of timing. You will get tomorrow, we'll publish literally an outline of all the questions, what you do time-wise. What I need you guys to do is you walk into the exam, those of you that are at Excel, yeah? Do not look at the second section. Don't even open the second section. Stick to the first section, and you're going to read in particular the 12 marker and the 225 markers. You'll know what topics the 25 markers are, okay? Choose the question that you're going to do. You'll know straight away which one realistically is the one that you feel more comfortable doing, yeah? That way, when you now go through it with your 2 highlighters, one is for the 12, one is for the 25, you are looking through the extracts to find data to support either micro or macro points for the 25 marker or to support whatever your answer is for the 12 marker. Clear? So that is the point, yeah? So that's how you basically maximize your time or minimize how much time it takes to basically work through the extracts. 8 markers, I've done multiple videos on 8 markers and how I think 8 marker is the killer question. You guys need to be careful with the 8 marker. The A marker is non-subjective. That means there is literally no levels. You just need to go knowledge, application analysis. If you don't know what I mean, please look at the YouTube stream for paper 2. I went through, I think, more than 1 8 marker, maybe at least 1 8 marker. And I showed you guys exactly how to answer it and get the 3 marks of analysis, 3 marks of analysis again, 6 analysis marks, and what you do to get the 2 marks of evaluation. Yeah? Some of you were telling me they gave you loads of extracts for the papers. They did, but they were short. They weren't that long, so it wasn't crazy. Hopefully, by the way, even if you found timing really difficult, I really appreciate timing is very tough for that exam. Guys, this is going to be the most time-pushing exam that you will sit. You need to write really fast. Hence why if it gives you a cost and revenue diagram, you're saving time. You're getting all the marks and you're saving time. The paragraphs I've gone through with you that are like instinctive, like investment components of AD shifts out, injection, those paragraphs you plan in advance so you know that that's the paragraph that you're going to write. You write it like someone has a gun to your head. I want you to write like crazy, right? Fast to save time. Yeah. Other than that, guys, it has been a pleasure. Hopefully my videos have been helpful to you guys, even if it helped like 1%, 2%. Massive love to all of you who've sent me all the the follows, the messages, all that. I really appreciate it. I don't have time to respond to all of you guys. You guys are amazing. I hope you guys kill it. Please let me know how you get on. There will be more videos coming out in the next couple of days on the TikTok and Instagram and everything else. But yeah, we did 2.5 hours today. Hopefully, roughly 2.5 hours. Go and smash it. I know you will. Yeah.